Hey folks, it's Cody Stoffer with Playmaker's Corner, here to tell you about Code Red coaching. Competing in athletics means you've lifted the weights, you've watched film, and you've got the passion. Problem is, that's what everyone else in the state has done. Perfect your game by honing in on your mental performance with Code Red coaching. Whether you are a team or an individual, Code Red coaching has the tools to create mentally solid habits and set up you or your team for success. Find Code Red coaching at coderedcoaching.com or call 720-979-1914 to learn more today. That's coderedcoaching.com or 720-979-1914 today. Now back to the show.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? This is Phoenix Barons with Playmaker's Corner, and I'm back again with the 1A Week 7 recap. We got a lot of games to get through this week, and let's get started. As of this morning, October 14th, we're going off of the stats that have been provided as of today. Let's get right into it. Starting off with Thursday's game, October 10th. It was a lone 1A matchup between Platte Valley at Jefferson. Platte Valley looking for a little bit of redemption, and Jefferson had a pretty impressive game last week with a lot of big performances. But this was definitely just a game that Platte Valley had to win, and they went in there on a mission, went into Jefferson's house, and came away with a big win, 54-8. Platte Valley was not able to provide any stats, however, Jefferson was, and got a couple of good performances out of number 11, Demetrius Martinez, the senior, who was 16 for 24 for 238 yards and a touchdown, although having 3 interceptions, as well as 7 carries for 38 yards. And the receiving game still on point in Jefferson is number 8, Gianno Gomez, the sophomore, had 5 receptions for 114 yards. And number 24, Maximus Martinez Aguirre, the junior, who had 5 receptions for 96 yards and the team's lone touchdown. Tough loss for Jefferson at home. They face a really, really good Platte Valley team that have been in 2A for so many years. Just wasn't able to handle it as Platte Valley came away with the win. And that is our lone game for Thursday. So now we'll kick it off to the Friday Night Lights. Moving on to Centauri at center. Centauri is proving why they are absolutely the team to be in 1A football right now. They've been unstoppable this season. They've been a really, really good team to face for every 1A opponent. They have not lost a game yet, and it continues as they went into center to come away with a shutout win, their second shutout win of the season, this time 58-0. No stats have been provided by both teams, unfortunately, so can't really talk about who had their best performance in this one. But 6-0 Centauri defeating now the 0-6 Center in a big win. They are still perfect in conference play as they look to face Trinidad next week, and will probably continue to look perfect moving on into the rest of the season. The Pinnacle at Manual, a good old Denver matchup. Federal Heights in the heart of Denver. Pinnacle, though, it was not going to be easy, and Manual made sure it was not easy. This is definitely the biggest shutout so far in 1A. This is definitely the biggest shutout in 1A this week, as Manual hosted Pinnacle and absolutely crushed them 69-0. Unfortunately, no stats have been provided by either team as of this recording, but a tremendous performance from Manual as they got the win at home. Forge Christian at Flatirons Academy. Forge Christian, they've been on the up and up lately. I mean, they've been a team to look out for. We've been kind of wondering, is this team legit? And they've been facing a lot of good teams so far this season, and they remain perfect as they go into Flatirons Academy's house and come away with a big-time shutout win, 42-0. Flatirons, they've been doing pretty well so far this season. I mean, their record may not show it right now. After this loss, they are 3-3, but they're a good team, and this was a good fight for Forge Christian to prove themselves. Solid performances from number 15, Sullivan Strange, the senior, 8 for 13 for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as having 4 carries for 29 yards. But you got to give it to the other producers on this team. Number 4, Eli Tafoya, the senior, who had 6 carries for 72 yards and a touchdown. Number 11, Dante Vigil, the senior, 6 carries for 51 yards and 1 touchdown. Also having a reception for 19 yards and a touchdown. And also got to give a shout out to Quentin Torres, the junior, who had a carry for 12 yards, a reception for 26 yards and a touchdown. But it was on defense where he also delivered, having an interception. Solid win for Forge Christian as they continue to prove to 1A that they are still a top team in the classification. Good win for the Fury. Monte Vista at Del Norte. I'm pretty sure Del Norte is forfeiting the rest of their season, because that's kind of the outlook that I'm interpreting from their history so far. They've played one game. They played one game against Olaf and lost, and they forfeited the rest of their season since then. Like every single game they've come up against. So Monte Vista coming into Del Norte did not happen. It just was a forfeited game, which is really unfortunate. Wanted to see how Monte Vista would continue their momentum, but they get a free win. So that's the result of that game. Meeker at Roaring Fork. Meeker, they've had a couple tough losses so far this season. They had some tough losses to Wiggins. They lost to, I think, Centauri as well. Let's see. Yeah, they opened up their season at 0-2, losing to Centauri and Wiggins, 2 really good teams in 1A, and since then they have been winning out. They beat Gunnison, Grand County, and they enter conference play facing Cedar Edge and Roaring Fork, absolutely destroying the competition, and especially Roaring Fork. They went into their house and got a shutout, 40-0, thanks to the quarterback, Cade Mills, the sophomore. I mean, 1 for 4 for 15 yards, so they didn't pass that much, but it was on the ground where he was the most efficient. 16 carries for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I got to give a shout out to number 22, Clay Crawford, the senior. He was an impact player. In just 3 carries, he had 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then on defense, having 6 tackles, 3 solo, 3 assisted. He can do it. He's a solid performer, and that's definitely a good performance from Meeker to get a win on the road. Peyton at Colorado Springs Christian. Now, this was a close matchup. No stats from Colorado Springs Christian as of this recording, but Peyton made sure to go in and get the job done. This was a close matchup. 2 teams that are highly regarded in 1A this season. And Peyton, they're trying to go out there and prove themselves a little bit, and they did more than enough. I mean, they kept it close, so a little bit of a nail biter for them, but they were able to get away with a win, and that's really all that matters. Good performance from Noah Martin, who had an incredible week last week, having 5 for 15 for 60 yards and an interception. This time around, not so well passing, but on the ground, 15 carries for 95 yards and a touchdown. So still a solid performance from him. And also I got to give a shout out to number 2, Colton Cobb, the senior, 14 carries for 147 yards and 1 touchdown, as well as having 2 receptions for 26 yards. On defense, he contributed as well, having 7 tackles, 4 solo, 3 assisted, and a forced fumble. And number 42, Corbin Pena, the sophomore, recovering that fumble. But he also had an interception, so he had 2 turnovers in that game. So good performance from number 42, Corbin Pena, and also a good win for Peyton as they went into Colorado Springs Christian and got the win 13-12. Moving on, Ignacio at Trinidad. Now, we didn't get any stats from either team as of this recording, which is unfortunate because Ignacio went into Trinidad's house and got a big-time win from them. Ignacio, they've had a lot of tough matchups so far. I mean, they've lost to Manual, lost Cedar Edge, and lost to pretty good teams. Had a close loss to Bayfield, who had a really good performance this week. And then, of course, starting off their conference play with Centauri is going to be really, really tough. But this is still going to be an interesting team. I wonder how the rest of their season will go. Hopefully they'll be able to get a winning record out of this, but they're still a pretty good team after looking at their performance. They were able to go into Trinidad's house and get the win 53-6. Wiggins at Yuma, 2 highly regarded teams in 1A, 2 teams that have been poking at the top 10 for most of the season, especially Wiggins. And Wiggins proved it why they are one of the top teams in 1A as they went into Yuma's house. They are a team when they are on the road. Like they are a good team on the road. I mean, their record 3-3 with losses to Forge Christian, shutout losses to Forge Christian and Strasbourg, and then a close loss to Lyman to kick off conference play. It's they've had a good season, a lot of ups and a lot of downs, but this was a good way to get right back on track as they went into Yuma's house and got the win 27-6. Shout out to number 4, Jason Lewisberg, the senior, who had 23 carries for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. And number 22, Jorge Mendez, the senior, 11 carries for 79 yards and a touchdown, as well as 8 tackles, 2 solos, 6 assisted, and a sack. So he contributed on both sides of the ball in this one. And also number 6, Marcus Steinbar, the senior, 2 carries for 14 yards, 2 receptions for 16 yards. But on defense, he also had 2 interceptions along with his 3 tackles. So Wiggins absolutely dominated Yuma on the road, getting the win 27-6. Olaf at Grand Valley. This is going to be an interesting matchup between 2 conference opponents. Olaf had a couple wins this year, which is interesting to see them do that because they haven't won in many years. So this was going to be an interesting matchup for Grand Valley, and they took care of business at home as Grand Valley got the win 25-14. Thanks to performances from number 6, Mason Schopner, the senior. 17 carries for 149 yards and a touchdown, as well as having 9 tackles, 5 solo, 4 assisted, a sack, and a fumble recovery. He did a very good job in this one. Also got to give a shout out to the quarterback, number 13, Andrew Horner, the senior. 1 for 3 for 12 yards and an interception, but it was on the ground where he is the most effective, having 11 carries for 57 yards and 3 touchdowns. So big performance from him and a solid performance from this team. Defense also getting 5 sacks. What a game from Grand Valley as they move on with the win. Ellicott at Rye. Now, Rye had submitted stats, but they didn't submit who scored touchdowns, but they did submit who scored yards. But it was a good performance from them as they hosted Ellicott and were able to get the win 21-12, and a solid performance from number 23, Josh George, the senior, having 9 carries for 147 yards. Rye able to take care of business at home and get the win. And this is the one that shakes up 1A right here. Holyoke at Lyman. Holyoke went into Lyman's house. Now Lyman, they've been questionable a little bit. I'm not even going to lie. They've had a couple close games throughout this season. They've had close games against Wiggins. They had a close one in Buena Vista. Granted, it was 2-score in that one, but 2 points against Wiggins to start off conference play. And then it really became the reality check hosting the Holyoke Dragons, and they fall short. Down goes Goliath in this one as Holyoke went into Lyman's house and got the win 20-17. No stats have been uploaded by either team as of this recording, but still, it is a tremendous win for Holyoke to get on the road against a powerhouse in 1A. Huge matchup for them and a great win. North Fork at Cedar Edge. Now, Cedar Edge did not upload any stats, but this was a close, low-scoring game for North Fork and a good win for them as well as they got the win over Cedar Edge 14-0. Number 1, Payson Peen, the senior, who had 14 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as having a 1 reception for 10 yards. Good performance from him, responsible for both scores for North Fork, and then also number 24, Skylar Anderson, getting it done on defense. 11 tackles, 6 solo, 5 assisted, and a sack. North Fork gets the win on the road. Estes Park at Highland. Now, there aren't stats from either team in this one, which is really unfortunate because Highland took care of business against Estes Park, putting on a clinic and absolutely destroyed Estes Park at home, getting a big win for the Huskies, 61-6. That closes out the Friday games. Let's visit the final 3 games that happened this past Saturday, October 12th, as Platte Canyon went into Prospect Ridge Academy's house, and this was a nail-biter. This was close and came down to the wire in the finish, and no stats from Platte Canyon, but Prospect Ridge did because they were the team that came out on top. 27-26, thanks in part to performances from number 9, Jackson Stark, the sophomore, 7 for 10 for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 1 interception. But number 40, Machoan Puga, the senior, 23 carries for 130 yards, and his lone reception going 85 yards to the house for a touchdown. Defense, have yourself a day. 4 fumble recoveries. That's huge. Able to get 4 fumble recoveries, basically 4 big turnovers, and also interceptions by Savet Taware, the senior, and Jason Rahit, the sophomore. Huge performance from Prospect Ridge as they were able to hold off the Huskies at home. Burlington at Ray. This was going to be an interesting one. I really was curious about how this one would go, especially for Burlington, going into a top team like Ray and into their house and seeing how they would perform. And Ray are as advertised, getting the job done, hosting the Cougars. Ray, no problem for them, especially if you're number 1 Casey Midcap, the senior. 10 for 10 for 252 yards and 3 touchdowns. 4 carries for 39 yards as well. It just seemed like Ray couldn't do anything wrong. Number 3, Samuel Meisner, the senior, 10 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. And also got to give a shout out to Midcap's favorite target in this one, number 19, Aaron Tina, the junior. 4 receptions for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a clinic for Ray as they hosted the Cougars and got the win 49-6. And finally, to close it out, I guess Dolores Huerta Prep just really did not want the smoke because Buena Vista was going to go into their house, and this game resulted in a forfeit. So free win for Buena Vista, and unfortunate pill for Dolores Huerta to swallow. Yeah, not much else you can say with a forfeited game, but good win for Buena Vista and Monta Vista as they move forward throughout their season with wins under their belt. But that'll do it for all the games that happened this Saturday. So that will take me to the Playmaker of the Week for Week 7. Not a lot of performances really, stuck out to me like as a real outlier to make this easy, which is good. But there were still some solid performances that I have to give shout outs to. So here are my top 4 candidates for Playmaker of the Week. Starting off with Ray's number 1, Casey Midcap, the senior. 10 for 10 is crazy, but having 252 yards and 3 touchdowns behind that is absolutely wild. And also getting it done on the ground, having 4 carries for 39 yards. Like I said with Ray, it just seemed like everything they do, they could not go wrong. It was a good performance from them. Also got to give a shout out to Grand Valley's number 6, Mason Shopner, the senior. 17 carries for 149 yards and a touchdown, and also getting the job done on defense, having 9 tackles, 5 solo, 4 assisted, a sack, and a fumble recovery. Great performance from him and getting that Grand Valley win. Also, Peyton, we're going right back to Peyton, but this time it's number 2, Colton Cobb, the senior. 14 carries for 147 yards and a touchdown. Also 2 receptions for 26 yards, but it was also on defense where he delivered, having 7 tackles, 4 solo, 3 assisted, and a forced fumble as well. And Meekers, number 22, Clay Crawford, able to close out that shutout off of his performance, having 3 carries for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns, and also getting 6 tackles on defense. So, Playmaker of the Week, who do I pick? Well, my rule for Playmaker of the Week is someone that can make plays on both sides of the ball, especially for football. Not for football, especially for 1A, because 1A football, you don't really have a lot of players that play strictly one position in football. So, with that being said, I'm going to have to, this is a tough one. There's a lot of great performances on this one. But I'm going to probably have to give it to Grand Valley's number 6, Mason Shopner, the senior, for his performance. And here's why. It was a close game. It was going to be a tough matchup for them in their conference. It was a clutch win for them. And also getting a sack and a fumble recovery is huge. Having a lot of tackles as well. He didn't score too many touchdowns like Clay Crawford or Casey Midcap, but I just see, when I think of a playmaker, I think of someone that can deliver on both sides of the ball, and they absolutely did that. So congratulations to Mason Shopner out of Grand Valley. You are this week's Playmaker of the Week for Week 7. And that'll do it for me for this week's 1A football recap, and can't wait for next week. See you guys around.
Alright, what's good, y'all? Coach V here, and I got your recap from October 11th. We have Manitou Springs hosting La Junta in this game. Both teams currently outside of the playoff picture, but needing this win to keep their playoff hopes alive here. Also, a special night for Manitou Springs as they would go ahead and dedicate their field to their longtime head coach, who obviously retired a long time ago, about 15 or so years ago, and just made the Hall of Fame, the Chassa Hall of Fame in 2022. That's George Rajkovic. So congrats, coach, over there. That is definitely big time. And yeah, now that field is, Manitou's field is named George Rajkovic Field. So congrats to them. But let's go ahead and hop into this one. This was a very interesting game here to start, but in the first quarter, Manitou will get the ball, and on, I want to say, the second play here, Logan Moore goes ahead and he rips this one off for an 80-yard touchdown. He just found a lane and was gone to give Manitou the early 7-0 lead here, with 11:15 left. Now, La Junta, they try to field this kick, but there's some issues here, and they get stopped for a pretty tough loss, I would say. It feels like a loss, as they're now starting on the 5-yard line here. They go ahead and hand it off to number 4. That would be Chris Barea here, who would make it 2nd and 8. They'll then toss it left to Barea for no gain. And then on 3rd and 5, there's a bad snap here, as number 9 for Manitou Springs, that would be Layden Little, would go ahead and jump on this ball for the safety here to make it 9-0 with 9:43 left in this first quarter. Now, Manitou with all the momentum as the crowd is going crazy here. They take over with the 1st and 10, approaching midfield. They go ahead and hand it off to Logan Moore left here. He bounces outside. He gets a quick 1st down. They then toss it right. That goes to Layden Little, who is stopped for a loss here. They then hand it off left here back to Moore. It's a sweep. He gets about 4. And then on 3rd down here, there's a huge sack by Ryland Schmidt, who makes it 4th and long. And so Manitou has to punt it. La Junta hanging in this game for now. Now, they get the ball and they take over on the 16 with 7:14 left here. And on 1st down, they hand it off to number 4, who is patient, and he ends up finding a lane and gets a 1st down, bouncing it outside. They then go ahead and call a quarterback keeper to Ryland Schmidt, who runs right to make it 2nd and 6. He then runs it again to get 4 more. And then on 3rd and 2 here, Schmidt gets a snap. He's going to roll out again and run it, but he drops the snap. Luckily, though, the ball bounces off the ground back to him, and then he takes this to the house down the right sideline to make it 9-8. They would call a 2-point conversion play here, a little flag football type play, which would go back to, I believe, the tight end or someone near the snapper there. Either way, they cut this lead to 1 point as they only trail 9-8. Now, Manitou Springs, they take over here, but a quick 3 and out on a drive where some runs just didn't go anywhere. And so La Junta is looking to take over, but on the punt, there's a roughing the kicker penalty. So now it's 1st down Manitou as this drive extends. So 1st 10 on the 47, approaching midfield. Go ahead and hand it off to number 10, Cohen Barrett, who finds a lane up the left sideline, and he is gone to the house to make it 16-8 after the PAT with 2:57 left. Manitou taking advantage of that crucial mistake by La Junta. Now, La Junta, they take over on the 31 here, and on 1st down, Schmidt runs what looks like to be a counter option play, but he gets smacked, clobbered in the backfield by Trafford Havens for a loss, and so that brings up 2nd down, and on 2nd, Schmidt finds the open curl route to his right, and he throws it, and it's on the money, but the DB for Manitou couldn't quite see who it was. He goes ahead and punches this ball out, and Manitou recovers the fumble, and so they take over with the 1st and 10 on the 48 with 2:01 left as they are rolling. Now, on first down, Ben Perkins, their quarterback, he just runs it up the middle for 2. They then hand it, or they go ahead and run the same play to Perkins. He gets about 4. And then they run a counter here, but there's a fumble, and it is forced and jumped on by number 70, Joe Nunez of La Junta. And so they go ahead and avoid another potential fatal mistake there, as Manitou's not able to capitalize right there. And they take over near midfield here. Let's go ahead and skip to the second quarter. It's 2nd and 4 at the top of the second. They toss it left, and they go ahead and get a first down. They then hand it off on a sweep left to Chris Perea, who gets a nice gain here. It's first down and 10. Not first down and 10. It is first down and 20. There's a holding call, on one of those plays on that toss left. So it became first and 20, and then toss left goes ahead and makes it 2nd and 18. Then they go ahead and roll Schmidt out right. He goes nowhere, so it's 3rd and 18. They then toss it out right here, but he is brought down. The running back's brought down by Asher Levine, so that would be a punt, as another mistake on La Junta results in Manitou taking over. So 1st and 10 on the 20 with 9:34 left. And on the first play here, they hand it off to Logan Moore, who finds a lane right up the middle. Great blocking, and he breaks loose, and he is gone to the house to make it 22-8 with 9:22 left. The PAT is good, so it's actually 23-8 here in the second quarter, as Manitou has really been dominating this game for the most part. Now, La Junta, they're not out of it just yet. They do get a first down to start this drive, a handoff to Chris Perea, but another handoff to him would only go for 3. Then Schmidt would roll out left here and then kind of just slip up, so it's 3rd and 17, and then they would run a reverse, which is stop for a loss. So they have to punt it, and Manitou takes over with the 1st and 10 on the 7. But they're not quite able to make this thing work out here. There is a bad, or not a bad snap here, but the snap is bobbled, and it's dropped in their own end zone, and Manitou ends up falling on it instead of allowing La Junta to fall on it. So La Junta takes over with 4:54 left, as they slightly cut into the lead, making it 23-10 here. Now, after a couple plays, they do find themselves in a 4th and 13 situation here, where Manitou calls a timeout at 2:40, and after that timeout, Schmidt, he goes deep, throwing towards the right corner, but number 2, Caden Bunker of Manitou goes ahead and knocks that away, so that's a turnover on downs. Now Manitou, they're not able to do much with the ball here, with just under 2 minutes left. They go 3 and out here, and it looks like La Junta is not able to do anything. So let's just go ahead and skip to the third quarter, where the drought for La Junta continues. They do receive. They're only down 23-10, but they gotta score here, and they're just not able to do that. A couple incompletions and some run plays just go nowhere, so they go 3 and out. And so Manitou, they take over across midfield after the punt here. They go ahead and hand it up the middle. That makes it 2nd down. They then hand it off to Moore again. That gives them a first. Another handoff to Moore after that gives them 2 first downs in a row. Then there's a penalty. I think it's false start to make it 1st and 15, but then they hand it off to Logan Moore, who cuts it upfield, and he goes to the house. Another 20-plus yard touchdown here to make it 29-10, 30-10 after the PAT with 7:20 left, as La Junta's chances is just running out here. And on top of that, this next drive, they go nowhere. A holding penalty really kills that drive. For Manitou, they're not able to respond yet, as after they take over on that punt, they go 3 and out. Then La Junta, they take over here, and at this point, there's definitely some chirping going on both sides here. So just to summarize this next drive for La Junta, a lot of penalties against Manitou would end up with them having a pretty long drive, and it would end with a handoff to number 4, Chris Perea, who would go ahead and just run it up the middle to make it 30-17 here with 2:15 left. Manitou, like I said, a lot of penalties against them on this one, but they go ahead and take over on offense here, and you could pretty much guess what would happen here. 1st and 15 after an initial first down by Logan Moore. They go ahead and hand it off to Logan Moore again, and he goes again to the house, this time at least 40-50 plus yards to the house to make it 37-17, 38-17 after the PAT. At this point, it is pretty much over here. Logan Moore, I believe, would score all of Manitou's touchdowns, as they would they would win this one, in dominating fashion, 43-24. La Junta just too many mistakes to start out this game here, and just a very slow start. And then they just couldn't stop Logan Moore, who was killing them whenever he got the ball. And so that's just kind of how that went there. Before we get to reactions, let's get to these interviews that Gideon was able to get with a couple players here. Let's start with La Junta, and I believe I've been saying the name wrong. I thought I was saying it right, but it's Chris Barella here of La Junta, their running back, who got them going here in this game and was one of their lone bright spots. But let's go ahead and go to that interview here real quick.
What's up? This is Gideon here with Christopher from La Junta. It's Barella, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. When we're looking at tonight, obviously not the result that you wanted,
Yeah.
but you guys still showed a lot of fight, getting some crucial gains and crucial moments.
Yeah.
What were you guys saying to yourselves throughout the course of this game to make sure that you kept it close?
Bend, don't break. Just bend, don't break. Don't give up. I mean, pretty much all we could do is not give up.
Hey, fair.
That's about it.
Fair enough. And when we look at, you yourself had a couple of big moments. That touchdown in particular stands out in my mind.
Yeah.
What was going through your head when you got that crucial score there to narrow it for the Tigers?
I'd kick the ball, stop them, have them turn over, and then score again.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Christopher.
You're welcome.
And catch you on the flip.
All right, now thank you, Gideon, for that interview. Now let's go ahead and go to the Manitou side here. Gideon was able to interview both Layden Little and Logan Moore here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to play the Layden Little interview, and then right after will be the Logan Moore interview.
What up? This is Gideon here with Layton Little of Manitou Springs High School. Layton, you've been out here getting pressure on quarterbacks for a few years now. You got in a lot of pressure on their QB. You got a sack in there.
Yes, sir.
How does it feel to drive your heels in and force a quarterback out of bounds like you did there?
I mean, it feels great just to be hitting someone out of bounds, just killing quarterbacks all the time. It feels good, man.
Very good. And are you a senior this year?
I'm a junior.
Okay, but still, for the past 2 years, you're going up against La Junta. Unfortunately for you, you lose those games. How does it feel to get that win tonight and break that 11-year streak?
It feels amazing, man, especially with us naming the stadium after George Reikovich. It feels great bringing that single wing back to Manitou again.
Very good. And to close it out for you, what would you say was the biggest contributor to the win tonight for the Stangs?
Just offense, getting their great blocks in and just kept running the ball. We never gave up any flags or anything like that when they tried to put it down on us. Just played a good ball game today.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's up? This is Gideon here with Logan Moore of Manitou Springs High School. Logan, 5 touchdowns, first win over La Junta in 11 years. How does that feel? How does it feel to be a Mustang?
I mean, it was just such a team effort. I mean, we've worked all week for this, putting our heads down, grinding every single day. You know, the past few games, we've lost some stupid mistakes, stupid fumbles. Our coaching staff just put their hearts out there every single week, no matter how we win, how we lose. We put our heads down. You know, they were talking all that. We kept our heads down. We're men of honor. We work hard. We just came out and executed perfectly. So those holes, I mean, I scored 5 touchdowns. Those holes were bigger than you can imagine. So, yeah.
Hey, well, when we're looking at this game, this is a crucial momentum setter moving into a league that has 2 top 10 opponents in the 2A classification in it.
Yeah.
What do you think this game gives you moving forward through that league schedule?
I mean, it gives us reassurance. You know, we've known that we've had this power, you know. We've been working so hard. We have so many good athletes. We just haven't been able to execute. I mean, the past few games, we've been in the red zone 4 times each game, and we fumble. You know, we just can't put it in the end zone. We came out with this new formation. You know, we're working on stuff constantly, trying to get new things going through the book. So, no, it's just reassurance. We know we can do it, but we just got to execute better. I mean, that's what we did tonight, so.
Hey, fair enough. And all around, it's the dedication of the new field.
Yeah.
You're out here. You got 5 touchdowns. You got a bunch of runs here to look at. What was your favorite moment from tonight's win?
I mean, our favorite moment was just pregame walking by with the flags, me and my brothers, and I see the alumni just standing there telling us, you know, good luck tonight. And it just made me want to win so much more. And, you know, these coaches, we haven't beat La Junta in 11 years. 11 years we haven't beat La Junta. And we were saying that all week long, and this is the team to do it. We have the athletes. We just had to clean up a couple things, like I said. So, yeah, it feels great.
Hey, very good. Thank you very much, Logan.
Good to see you, man.
All right, so there you go. Thank you, Gideon, for those interviews. But a historical night for Manitou ends with a dub as they keep their playoff hopes alive and end a 3-game skid here. Now, next week, they get a tough one against Lamar. If they really want to make the playoffs, they're going to have to win that one and probably Woodland Park to really secure that spot. But for now, they're going to enjoy it. Logan Moore went off this game. The team played great and, just a great small-town atmosphere. And once again, congrats to Coach George Rajkovic. Well-deserved. And yeah, we saw some history being made. As you heard, they beat La Junta for the first time in 11 years, which is a fine program. Now, for La Junta, unfortunately, this was a very tough loss here as their losing streak extends to 4. Now, granted, they lost to the likes of Strasburg, TCA, and Lamar, but their only wins are against Pueblo Centennial and Mitchell here. They are running out of games to win here. I don't know if they can make the playoffs, but we'll have to see what happens as they approach their final 3 games here in the season. But there you go there. Once more, Manitou Springs defeats La Junta 43-24 at home.
What's up? This is Christopher. This is Gideon here with Christopher from La Junta. It's Barella, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. When we're looking at tonight, obviously not the result that you wanted,
Yeah.
but you guys still showed a lot of fight, getting some crucial gains and crucial moments.
Yeah.
What were you guys saying to yourselves throughout the course of this game to make sure that you kept it close?
Bend, don't break. Just bend, don't break, don't give up. Pretty much all we could do is not give up.
Hey, fair.
That's about it.
Fair enough. And, you go, brother. And when we look at, you yourself had a couple of big moments. That touchdown in particular stands out in my mind.
Yeah.
What was going through your head when you got that crucial score there to narrow it for the Tigers?
I'd kick the ball, stop them, have them turn over, and then score again.
Hey, all right. Thank you very much, Christopher.
You're welcome.
And catch you on the flip. Oh, fair enough. All right. What up? This is Gideon here with Leighton Little of Manitou Springs High School. Leighton, you've been out here getting pressure on quarterbacks for a few years now. You got in a lot of pressure on their QB. You got a sack in there.
Yes, sir.
How does it feel to drive your heels in and force a quarterback out of bounds like you did there?
I mean, it feels great just to be hitting someone out of bounds, just killing quarterbacks all the time. It feels good, man.
Very good. And are you a senior this year?
I'm a junior.
Okay, but still, for the past 2 years, you're going up against La Junta. Unfortunately for you, you lose those games. How does it feel to get that win tonight and break that 11-year streak?
It feels amazing, man, especially with us naming the stadium after George Rajkovic. It feels great bringing that single wing back to Manitou again.
Okay, very good. And to close it out for you, what would you say was the biggest contributor to the win tonight for the Stangs?
Just offense, getting their great blocks in and just kept running the ball. We never gave up any flags or anything like that when they tried to put it down on us. Just played a good ball game today.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. What's up? This is Gideon here with Logan Moore of Manitou Springs High School. Logan, 5 touchdowns, first win over La Junta in 11 years. How does that feel? How does it feel to be a Mustang?
I mean, it was just such a team effort. I mean, we've worked all week for this, putting our heads down, grinding every single day. The past few games, we've lost some stupid mistakes, stupid fumbles. Our coaching staff just put their hearts out there every single week, no matter how we win, how we lose. We put our heads down. They were talking all that. We kept our heads down. We're men of honor. We work hard. We just came out and executed perfectly. So those holes, I scored 5 touchdowns. Those holes were bigger than you can imagine. So, yeah.
Hey, well, when we're looking at this game, this is a crucial momentum setter moving into a league that has 2 top 10 opponents in the 2A classification in it.
Yeah.
What do you think this game gives you moving forward through that league schedule?
It just gives us reassurance. We've known that we've had this power, We've been working so hard. We have so many good athletes. We just haven't been able to execute. The past few games, we've been in the red zone 4 times each game, and we fumble. We just can't put it in the end zone. We came out with this new formation. We're working on stuff constantly, trying to get new things going through the book. So, no, it's just reassurance. We know we can do it. but we just got to execute better. I mean, that's what we did tonight. So,
Hey, fair enough. And all around, it's the dedication of the new field.
yeah.
You're out here. You got 5 touchdowns. You got a bunch of runs here to look at. What was your favorite moment from tonight's win?
I mean, our favorite moment was just pregame walking by with the flags, me and my brothers, and I see the alumni just standing there, telling us, good luck tonight. And it just made me want to win so much more. And these coaches, we haven't beat La Junta in 11 years. 11 years we haven't beat La Junta. And we were saying that all week long, and this is the team to do. We have the athletes. We just had to clean up a couple of things, like I said. So, yeah, it feels great.
Hey, very good. Thank you very much, Logan.
Good to see you, man.
And
Nice to meet you.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Playmaker's Corner podcast. I'm your host for this segment of today's episode, Gideon, and today we are going to be talking about the 2A weekly recap. Yes, we're going to be going through all things 2A and just giving it a good look over, talk about the games that happened on the days that they happened, and just all around see what was up in Week 7. We are firmly in league play now, so it's all familiar teams facing each other, so let's just get her started with our Thursday games on Week 7, starting on October 10th of 2024. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I am recording this on Sunday, October 13th at 2:30 p.m., so if you think that you should have qualified for being a Playmaker of the Week, which will be revealed later, but your team does not have in stats by this time, there's only so much I can do without any stats. So, starting off, we are going to be looking at our Thursday games. First, we have Aspen beating Moffat County 53-6. The Skiers topping the Bulldogs here. Now, Brett Eggleston, 7 for 9 passing for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Dylan Micah, the junior, 12 carries for 98 yards and 2 scores. Andrew Palmaz as well, with 73 yards and a touchdown. And then Henry Hurd, 1 rush for 4 yards and a touchdown. Hurd was also the receiving leader with 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then on defense, the leaders were Palmaz and Landon Thurber, who each had 7 tackles, while Micah and Eddie Zane each had 5. 3 different players had picks for the Skiers here: Joshua Ford, Chile Smart, and Palmaz. Smart returned his for 80 yards and a touchdown. And all around, those account for all of the scores in this game for Aspen over Moffat County. Next up, we have Wellington defeating University 0-17, although it does look like Brevin Doss did not play in this game for University. University is the only one of these two teams that has offensive stats in. But Max Davis, 12 for 28 for 59 yards, no touchdowns to 1 pick. Freddie Kano was the rushing leader with 32 yards. And on defense, Uriel Aguilar and Carson Rash each had 8 tackles, while Gage Schminke had 6, and Xavier Flores had 5. Dominic Chacon had a fumble recovery, and then both Michael Kelly and Medardo Abrego each had 27 kick return yards. For Wellington, we only have defensive stats in this one, but we see that Trey Trujillo is among the leaders here with 8 tackles, while Tyler Schaefer had 9, Ethan Thurnez with 8 in here. Matt Brown and Ian Allison each had 7 tackles, Kason Brown with 6, and Seamus Pike with 5. Anijah Gardner had 1 sack in this game, while Houston Willite had a pick for 40 yards in this game. So, good game here from Wellington to beat University with Tanner Gray out. Up next, we have Bayfield actually defeating Pagosa Springs 30-28. We have Bayfield stats for this one. Cole McWhorter, 10 for 20 passing for 111 yards and 1 touchdown. Also, Lincoln Williams, 2 for 2 passing for 29 yards, along with 35 rushing yards and a touchdown. Mr. Gonzalez with 69 rushing yards and a touchdown as well. And Tyler Harriman with 67 yards through the air, receiving, and 1 score there. Lincoln Williams, 16 total tackles, 10 of those being solo. Kalen Ramos with 12, Williams with 11, the freshman. Valencia and Wilmer each with 6, while Westbrook and Harriman each had 5. In terms of picks, Wilmer had 1 in this game, while Keegan Johnston, Williams, and Logan Valencia each forced a fumble, one of which was recovered by Memphis Miller. In terms of kicking, Aiden Casillas, 3 for 3 on PATs, 1 for 3 on field goals, with that one being a 45-yarder. And ultimately, I'm not sure when in the game that was, but that was the difference maker here for Bayfield against Pagosa Springs. Because looking at it in the fourth quarter, Bayfield actually came into it down 14-28 down in the fourth quarter with 10 minutes left. And then Bayfield would end up scoring, making it 21-28, and eventually score, making it 27-28 before eventually pushing it to 30. That's according to the score tracker, which I'm not fully sure is accurate, but we're going to have to see how that goes. Next up, we have Kent Denver defeating Englewood 37-27. No stats for Kent Denver, but for Englewood, Dylan Knoll, 206 passing yards, 2 touchdowns to 2 picks. Deion Robinson with 158 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. Romeo Gonzalez with 113 receiving yards, and Logan Mail with 61 receiving yards and a touchdown. And on defense, Caven Mail with 11 tackles, Logan with 9, Robinson with 7, and then Mr. Sandoval with 5. And then Logan Mail had a sack as well in this game. Nothing really more to say outside of Sandoval. 5 kickoff returns for 104 yards. And that's really most of it for Englewood in this game. On Friday, we're going to be starting off with Devlin versus Lincoln. No stats for this one yet, but Devlin would beat Lincoln 55-0, so not much really needs to be said about the Lancers or the Jaguars here. Up next, Alamosa would defeat Gunnison 44-15. Dyson Woodward, 5 for 10 passing for 210 yards and 2 touchdowns to 1 pick. Also had 228 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, while Zane Zook had 109 rushing yards and 1 score. Gonzalez had 4 catches for 180 yards and 1 touchdown in this game. And that is all we have outside of Garcia catching a conversion and Zook rushing 1 in this game between Gunnison and Alamosa. After that, we're going to have Delta facing off with Middle Park. The Panthers coming out on top in this one, 42-13. No stats for this one as of yet. The same goes for the next game up, that being Weld Central versus Arvada. The Rebels would defeat the Bulldogs 61-14 here, and ultimately it does look like Weld Central is going to be on a crash course with Sterling to find out who is going to be the league champion this season for 2A League 7, which is a boring name for a league between you and me. Next up, we have Elizabeth defeating Bennett 49-0. No stats for Elizabeth yet, but for Bennett, we do see that Brody Hawes was the rushing leader with 35 yards, and that is about it. Next up, La Junta versus Manitou Springs. Simon and I were both at this matchup between these two teams. Manitou Springs snapping the 11-year losing streak between them and La Junta. Now, Logan Moore would rush for 5 touchdowns and about 250 yards. Leighton Little would have a safety in this game as well, while Preston Rhodes would also be catching a pick. We don't have official stats in, but those are just the stats I saw with my own eyes, so there we go there, to quote Simon. Next up, Montezuma Cortez would defeat Salida 34-27 on Friday night. No stats for this one yet. And the same goes for our next game on the chopping block, that being Resurrection Christian versus Eaton. Now, Eaton would win this one 27-0.
This game was tied at 0 going into the second quarter, but Eaton would score 7 in the second, 13 in the third, and 7 in the fourth to win this matchup here against Resurrection Christian. After that, we have Basalt facing off with Coleridge. Basalt winning this one 42-7. And the Longhorns, Mr. Schneider, 5 for 10 passing for 72 yards. William Daniel, 192 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Will Torallo with 148 rush yards and 1 touchdown. Taylor Hayes with 49 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in this game, along with Daniel, 12 total tackles. Parker Sims with 6, Chris Hayes with 5, Connor Ants with 5 as well here. Ants, Mr. Ocano, and Cody Barton each had 1 sack in this matchup, while Hayes had a pick. And all around, just a good game here for the Basalt Longhorns to defeat the Coleridge Titans. We don't really have very many stats for Coleridge, but I can say that on defense, Grayson Eisenhart, 28 total tackles, 7 solo, 21 assists with 1.5 tackles for loss. Evan Duca, 12 tackles. Carter Kuhn with 8. Tayson Collard with 7. And then Kai Osterly and Diego Gomez with 6, while Ethan Sanchez had 5. And those are all the stats that we have for Coleridge in this game. After that, though, we have Denver West falling to the Classical Academy, 49-0. The Titans coming out on top of the Cowboys. TCA just coming out of the gate with 21 points in the first quarter to Denver West's 0. Starting with Denver West here, though. King Stansel, 3 for 8 passing for 45 yards and 1 interception. Stansel also had 37 rushing yards, while Robert Whitkey had 2 catches for 41 yards in this game. Pretty solid for him. Aries Yuong, Jose Valencia, and Joshua Montoya each had 6 tackles, while Whitkey had 5. And then King Stansel also caught a pick in this game, while Giovanni Flores and Freddie Lucero each forced a fumble, and Lucero recovered 2. For TCA, though, on offense, Andrew Brown, 10 for 19 passing for 163 yards, 4 touchdowns to 1 pick. Riley Romine, 69 rush yards. Jackson Smentana with 52. And then Grant Keaton with 16 rushing yards and a touchdown in this game as well. Mr. Gustafsson, 1 catch for 36 yards and a score. 4 total players scored through the air: Alex Gould, J.D. Packard, and Khalil Blush. And then on defense, Zach Hale was the leader with 9 tackles. Romine had 7. And then J.D. Packard, Elijah Wright, and Gould each had 5. Andrew Richens and Ridge Blackwood each shared a sack, half a sack apiece, that is. And then Gabriel Wright caught a pick in this game, while Henry Hoyman and Romine each forced a fumble, and Wright, Romine, and David St. Marie each recovered a fumble. So all around good game here from TCA against previously undefeated Denver West. After that, we have Berthoud, who defeated Valley 40-6. No stats for Valley yet, but for Berthoud, 25 for 34 passing from Skylar Stryker for 379 yards and 2 touchdowns to 0 picks. Elisha Mosher with 41 rush yards, while Stryker had 32 rush yards and 2 touchdowns. Gavin Kirk also rushed for a touchdown here, while Jaden Michaelis caught 7 receptions for 147 yards. And Weston Petrowski, 4 catches for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cade Anderson, 87 receiving yards, and Jace Newbill with 64 himself as well. On defense, Sam Smith was the leader with 11 tackles. Mr. Hoffmeister and Sean Barajas each had 10. Elisha Mosher had 8. Sam Whitaker, Peyton Evans, and Ben Schroeder each had a 7 in this game. Whitaker and Barajas each shared a sack, and then Newbill caught a pick in this game, making a pretty well-rounded one for Berthoud. Schroeder would also be 2 for 2 on field goal attempts with a long of 30 in this matchup. After that, Banning Lewis Prep would face Florence. The Stallions of BLPA would fall to the Huskies 28-0. No stats for Banning Lewis, but for Florence, Noah Howard led rushing with 205 rush yards and 1 touchdown. Mr. Hunsberger with 59 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. On defense, the leader was Joey Hess with 8 tackles. Mr. Hunsberger had 8 himself. Kyle Nuss had 7, and Wyatt Dudley had 6, while Gabe Sullivan and Brennan Lambert each had 5. In terms of picks, Jarrett Lozano and Makai Height each had a pick for themselves, while Height had 3 pass deflections in this game, and Noah Howard would have 44 kick return yards. In the next game, Sterling would beat Brush 21-14, and the leader here was Carter Yeager. 23 carries for 210 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, while Hunter Hirschfeld, 4 carries for 39 yards and 1 touchdown. On defense, Aiden Kisser with 13 tackles, Yeager with 11, Hirschfeld with 11 himself, Caden Mikowski with 8, and then Memphis Dempsey with 5 tackles. Outside of that, Dempsey and Yeager would each recover a fumble here. And just a good game all around here by Sterling to defeat the Beat Diggers of Brush. Up next, we have what might have been the game of the week. We have Lamar actually falling to Woodland Park 20-24 here. 10 points in the first quarter for Lamar, 3 in the second, but they would actually be down 17-13 heading into halftime, and both Lamar and Woodland Park would score in the fourth quarter, making it 20-24 for the Panthers in this matchup over the Thunder. Marcus Schoenberger, 9 for 17 passing for 170 yards and 3 touchdowns. Trey Reed with 40 rush yards, Schoenberger 40 rush yards, and then Schoenberger with 30. Parker Shreve would have 66 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And Mr. Gakis would have 51 receiving yards and 3 catches for 1 touchdown. On defense, Aiden Hood was the leader with 15 tackles, Ben Summerall with 12, Gakis with 8 and 2 tackles for loss, Shreve with 7 and 1 tackle for loss, as well as Pizarro, who had 7 himself. Schoenberger had 6 tackles here. Pizarro would have 2 sacks in this game, while Gakis would have 1, and Leonhardt would have 1 himself. Shreve would force a fumble, and then Summerall would recover that, while Schoenberger would have 2 pass deflections, Nate Summerall would have 2 himself, and then Shreve would have 3. In terms of kicking points, Miles Wiley would go 3 for 3 on PATs and 1 for 2 on field goal attempts, with a 19-yard long on those. So very good game here by Woodland Park to down the Lamar Thunder. Just gonna need to see if Woodland Park can keep this up against the rest of this league. Otherwise, they might just go undefeated over the course of this season. Next up, another game we don't have stats for is Alameda defeating Mitchell 40-0. Alameda would only score 8 points in the first quarter, but would score 14 in the second, 12 in the third, and then 6 in the fourth to finalize it against Mitchell. No stats for Mitchell or Alameda in this game. And then finally, the last game of the week. This one was on Saturday. We have Fort Lupton losing to the Academy 17-9. We don't have stats for the Academy yet, but for Fort Lupton, Josiah Gonzalez, 6 for 16 passing for 44 yards and 1 interception. No Royce Guerrero, which is going to be something to keep an eye on. Jesse Soreto, 34 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. That's the one that they have here. Soreto was also the receiving leader with 16 yards. On defense, Harold McLean had 11 tackles with 3 for loss. Abraham Lujan and Mr. Bushman each had 8. Josiah Gonzalez and Joel Valadez each had 7. Soreto had 6, and then Dylan Alvarado had 5. Gage Hofferber and McLean each had half a sack, and then Julian Erigine had a pick, while Mr. Bushman blocked a field goal. And then in terms of points, looking at it, we have Hector Coral, 0 for 1 on PATs, but 1 for 1 on field goal attempts, with a long of 27 here. That's where those extra 3 points came from. And Fort Lupton would lose to the Academy 9-17. And that's all for all of our 2A games this week. Next week we have 5 games on Thursday. We have 12 games on Friday, and on Saturday we are going to have 3 different matchups. So hopefully some of these will be pretty close here. I'm just hoping that things stay relatively in reach. A number of these matchups are going to have playoff ramifications, particularly some of these games like Wellington-Eaton, Alamosa, Montezuma-Cortez, Delta-Aspen, even potentially like a Strasburg-Englewood. So we're going to have to see how these go. But for now, you all stay frosty. Make sure that you stay hydrated if you're driving while listening to this. Keep your eyes on the road. And I will catch you all soon. So, peace, and have a good day.
All right, what's up, Coach V here, and I got your Week 7 3A recap. Let's just go ahead and hop into it. We got a lot of games to talk about. Let's go to Thursday, October 10th here. Evergreen would go ahead and play Summit, and they would win this one pretty easily here, 43-6 on this day. No stats as of right now from Summit, but for Evergreen, it looks like Josh Bittner had himself a nice day. 11 carries, 92 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. James Morrow also adding on 70 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Grady White with 46 yards and a touchdown in that winning effort. Then it looks like Littleton has forfeited to Holyoke here. This is the second straight forfeit by Littleton here. I don't know if this football program will play again this season. They probably won't, just being completely honest there. Then we have Pueblo East. They take down Sierra 56-0, dominating them. Lutheran would then take down Stanley Lake 49-26. This game was a lot closer than some might have thought here, but Lutheran would pull away as the game went on. In the second half specifically, they would pull away with some nice touchdowns there. So there you go. No stats as of today, by the way, October 13th for either team. So just throwing that out there. But moving on here, we got Meade versus Timnath. Meade takes care of business 41-7 here. Christian Heiner 7 of 8, 123 passing yards, 1 touchdown. Noah Chapala here, the sophomore, getting some carries, 14 carries, 172 yards in the hat trick, 3 touchdowns. Ethan Elmore with 42 yards, Carter Woods with 30 yards and a touchdown, and then Heiner also had a rushing touchdown in this game as Meade dominates. Speaking of dominate, Pomona does just that against Roosevelt here. Not in a super surprising game, but definitely a little bit of a shocking one for Roosevelt as they dropped their second one in a row, a second blowout in a row for the first time in a while here, as Pomona wins 42-13 here. No stats, offensive stats by Pomona, but Connor Craver had 14 tackles and a TFL in this game here. DJ here and Dominic Martin each with a sack. So there you go there. That's their stats. For Roosevelt, they played 2 different quarterbacks, Josiah Ramirez and Jackson Craig. Both did not exactly play the greatest game here. Ramirez 11 of 17 for only 90 yards. Jackson Craig 2 of 13 for 20 yards here. The only thing they could really get going on offense was Luke Vigil running the ball, which, I mean, he had 21 carries for 106 yards and a touchdown, so even that wasn't super efficient there. So there you go there. As Roosevelt just loses a tough one to Pomona, a team that is kind of on the rise, and made a statement win there. Now, Eagle Valley, they would go ahead and play Glenwood Springs here. Huge game, if I may say so, for both teams. And Eagle Valley wins this one 28-21 here. Great game here by them. Colton Blakey. Let's start with Eagle Valley. But Coulter Blakey, the sophomore, 17 of 50 for 295 yards. Yes, you heard that right. So that's a 34% completion rating. But threw 3 touchdowns to 2 picks here. No real run game. Keaton Lake had a rushing touchdown in this one, but they were passing it. Lake, though, 6 receptions, 208 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Malachi Barros, 3 for 32 and a touchdown here, but Keaton Lake playing a great game. Some Playmaker of the Week performance type stuff here, as this goes a long way in Eagle Valley potentially having a playoff shot. But we'll see. For Glenwood Springs, though, a tough go. Wyland Dieter, 6 of 18, 28 yards, 2 picks here. Mason Markovich, though, 214 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on only 12 carries. This defense also had 2 picks by Griffin Solers and Garrett Skiwall, I want to say. Excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, but unfortunately Glenwood Springs just falls a little bit short here, 28-21, despite the effort from Markovich. So there you go there. Windsor, they take care of Nawat, 56-0. Kyle Phelps, 8 of 9, 99 yards. No touchdowns thrown here. The running game was working, though, as the junior, I feel like I'm going to butcher this, so I apologize ahead of time, but Adrian Cesazon, I want to say, Cesazon, the junior, he had only 2 carries for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns, so both of those went for touchdowns there. Trip Thomas with 5 for 54 and 2. Tegan Cole for 6 for 54 and 1, as they pretty much won big there. Looking at some of these defensive stats, though, real quick. Isaiah Cronk with a sack here. Toby Anderson with a pick. Grady Sullivan with a pick. And then Fernandez, the senior, with a pick there for Windsor as they continue to roll. All right, now moving on to Friday, October 11th. No Saturday games, by the way, so this will be it after this. But Green Mountain plays Wheat Ridge here. Both teams looking for a bounce back, and Green Mountain gets it, winning 49-17 here. Simon Lunsford, 13 of 14, super efficient, 279 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. On the ground here, it looks like it would be DeMarco Villalobos, I want to say that's how you say it. The senior, 11 carries for 151 yards and a rushing touchdown here. As far as receiving goes, Dax Gomez, 4 for 64 and a touchdown. Hudson Burke, 2 for 60 and a touchdown. Demetrius Padilla, 2 for 51 and a touchdown. And Max Babel, 1 47-yard touchdown reception, as this offense was clicking to start. 28 points in the first half here. For Wheat Ridge, they had some struggles here. Isaac McCune, 25 of 35, 290 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Also had 116 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Bennett Wilkes, though, had himself a game. 12 receptions for 150 yards and a touchdown there. But that was obviously not enough to beat Green Mountain. Kennedy would then blow out Hinckley 53-0. Discovery Canyon would do the same to Pueblo Centennial 50-8. Pueblo South would do the same to Palmer 49-12. A lot of blowouts here. No stats really from this game. So there you go there. Moving on here. Thompson Valley just barely gets by Severance with it looks like 2 field goals in the fourth quarter. So no touchdowns scored here, but 2 field goals to go ahead and give them the slight win. Almost an upset and definitely a little bit of a red flag, but we'll talk about that later in Power Rankings. Moving on, Lewis Palmer, they take down Harrison in a big one here. A lot of playoff implications as they win 58-27 here. Lewis Palmer running the ball per usual. Gregory Moore, the sophomore, with a nice game. 11 carries, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jaden Pagano, only 8 carries, but he made the most of it, 94 yards and a touchdown. Cole Harmon, 11 carries, that's their quarterback, by the way, for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Makai Mays, 11 for 44 and a touchdown as they pounded the rock. For Harrison, they tried to do that as well, but just not as efficiently here. Gulan Kraft, 3 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. Their junior quarterback, Hamin Yimana, I want to say, had 71 carries for a touchdown. And Josiah Evans, 9 for 60. Philip Pogue, though, only 8 for 20 yards there. Kraft also having a receiving touchdown, but obviously not enough firepower to beat LP. Northridge would then play Greeley Central, and Northridge wins this one once more here, 50-20. Justin Thill, 7 of 12, 109 yards and 1 touchdown here, but it was the sophomore who kind of stole the show for Northridge. That is Jermaine Wilson Jr., who had 21 carries for 246 yards and 6 touchdowns. Yes, you heard that correctly, as he ripped apart Greeley Central. Pueblo Central, they take care of Canyon City 35-12. No stats for Central, but for Canyon City here. Gavin Reddick, 9 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown. Jake Damage, 7 for 35 in this game, but not enough to beat Pueblo Central. Mountain View would then take care of Fort Morgan, 35-14. Pueblo County would take care of Coronado, 41-12. No stats here for County, but for Coronado, Thomas Buckmiller, 17 of 31, 210 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Jason Bodine, I want to say, had 85 rushing yards, and then Ezekiel Lambert was their lead, one of their lead receivers, 4 for 72 and 2 receiving touchdowns. Zen Groves right there as well with 5 for 90, as Coronado just not able to get much going there against Pueblo County. Conifer would play Skyview, and they'd get by them 36-22 here. Benson White, 14 of 20, 180 yards. 2 touchdowns, though, to 2 picks. On the ground, though, it was the senior running back Carson Wolonsky, who had 21 carries, 460 yards, and a touchdown. Carson Payer with 5 for 54 and 2, though, in this win. Then we had Palisade take care of Rifle, 48-0. Easton Embry, 9 carries, 155 yards, 2 touchdowns. Caleb Johnson, 10 for 46 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Caleb Reed, 2 carries for 42 yards and a touchdown. And then Springer, their quarterback, 31 rushing yards and a touchdown in this winning effort. So there you go there, 3A, tough as usual. But that'll do for your Week 7 recap here in the 2024 season.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Playmaker's Corner podcast. I'm Gideon, and today I will be recapping for you the Week 7 matchup between the Highlands Ranch High School Falcons and the Ponderosa Mustangs. This one's a 4A recap that happened on Thursday, October the 10th, and I'm just going to get this started real quick here. Ponderosa, they had this game. This is one of their first league matchups, and Highlands Ranch, they were 5-1 heading into this game, and both of them have had pretty good seasons so far, so I decided to go to this one on my way down to the Springs. And starting off in this game, George West for Highlands Ranch. I'm going to start off with Highlands Ranch here. And beginning this one, George West would return the opening kickoff for about 30 yards, but holding would bring that back some. Crew Gehrig would throw to Aiden Arnold for 12 and then to West for 15. And after a helmet got knocked off, Gehrig threw to Luke Bakken for 20 on 4th and 16. But after a flag, the Falcons would turn over on downs. After allowing a 35-yard rushing touchdown to go down 0-7 with 5:57 left, Gehrig would throw to West for 12 and then run for 10 himself. After a throw to Arnold for 15, Gehrig would rush in a touchdown, making it 7-all with 11:57 in the second quarter. Jaden Puhia would get a good pass deflection, and then Bakken would get a TFL to help force a turnover on downs. Bakken would then run for 40 before Gehrig threw to Timmy Schwab for 9, and then to Puhia for a touchdown, putting the Falcons in the lead 14-7 with 5:02 left. After a timeout with 4:22 and a 3-and-out, whoever was running the clock was having a very bad day. They wouldn't run the clock when it was supposed to, ultimately costing Highlands Ranch 20 seconds on defense with under a minute left and a touchdown, which got in 17.3 seconds left to make it 14-14 going into the half. The touchdown was scored by Pondo almost immediately, making it 14-21 with 11:20 on the board in the third. And after a 3-and-out, Highlands Ranch allowed a 70-yard rushing touchdown, making it 14-28 with 9 minutes in the third. On offense, they had to recompose themselves, and Gehrig would throw to Bakken for 11, then to West for 20. Puhia would run for 13 to enter the fourth, and then Gehrig would throw to West for a touchdown 2 seconds into the fourth quarter to close the gap, 21-28. After Grant Adamson saved a touchdown and the Falcons allowed another touchdown, down 21-35 with 10:04, Gehrig would throw to West for 15 and then to Puhia for 11. Gehrig would get it to the tight end, Brooks Hamlet for 10, and then Puhia for the first down on 3rd and 10. Finally, Gehrig would throw to West for another touchdown, closing it to 28-35 with 6:33 left. After an offsides and allowing all kinds of runs, Highlands Ranch would take a timeout with 2:07 and with 2:01 before allowing a touchdown with less than 2 minutes left to make it 28-42, and that was all she wrote for the Highlands Ranch Falcons. Overall, for the Falcons, the playmaker of the game in that one has to be Crew Gehrig. Gehrig in this matchup, he ultimately had 285 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, along with 12 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground here. Just very good game here from Gehrig. Luke Bakken also had a good day with 62 rushing yards, along with 47 on those, to go with 14 tackles, one of which was for loss, and a sack, along with a forced fumble for Bakken in this game. Just an all-around good game for him. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to grab an interview with Gehrig after this game just because it was only my second time at Halftime Help Stadium, and I did not realize where the locker room was, which is my bad. But they ended up walking out the other door that I did not know was there. So I did not get to talk to any of the Highlands Ranch guys, but all around a very good game here from the Falcons. After that, time to move on to Ponderosa, where this game started on defense for them, and after a face mask penalty, not by Bryson Tidwell, but Bryson Tidwell would get a sack, and Bennett Mione would deflect a pass. On offense, Al Capone Vesey would run for 9, and then Coulter Espinoza would throw to Max Mervin for 11. Troy McWhirter would then rush for a 35-yard touchdown, going up 7-0 with 5:57 left. Mione would have another punchy pass deflection, and then Tidwell would tackle for loss. Christian Karakostas would stop a first down, but in the second quarter, the Stangs would allow a touchdown, making it 7-all with 11:57 left. Espinoza would throw to Mervin for 15 and then to Cole Barnes for 20, and after a turnover on downs, Riker Thompson would tackle for loss. But this drive ultimately led to a touchdown where Pondo would commit PI, but it would still be caught, making it 7-14 with 5:02 in the quarter. Vesey would run for 20, and after a huge controversy on ball spotting and the clock, Vesey would run in a touchdown, tying it at 14 with 12 seconds left in the half. In the third, Mervin would return the opening kickoff for 75 yards, and then Vesey got a simple touchdown, going up 21-14 with only 40 seconds having passed in the third. Back on offense, Espinoza ran for a 72-yard touchdown, making it 28-14 with 9 minutes left. Absolutely crazy 3 minutes here for Ponderosa, and a great stretch of this game. This is the stretch of this game that put it away for the Mustangs. Cade Hayden got a pass deflection, then Tidwell got another sack, but on O, the Stangs went 3 and out. Caden Miller tackled for loss, and then Tidwell and Wyatt Bueller shared a sack, but Bueller got there first. Vesey would run for 10, and then for 45 that got called back. The Mustangs then punted and couldn't get a stop on defense, so in the fourth quarter, with 6 seconds having passed, they allowed a touchdown with 11:54 on the clock to make it 28-21. I heard Highlands Ranch players call Vesey Ashton Genty as he rumbled down the field for multiple double-digit gains before Espinoza would run in a touchdown. This made it 35-21 with 10:04 left, and after a PI and a personal foul, Tidwell would hit the quarterback on a throw, but the Stangs would allow another touchdown, making it 35-28 with 6:33 left. Then it was time to run down the clock, where Vesey got the ball a lot and eventually would run in a touchdown with less than 2 minutes left to put the Mustangs up 42-28 for good. And ultimately, there are a couple of guys that I do want to talk about here. First, our defensive playmaker of the game, Bryson Tidwell. He got his fair share of sacks in this matchup and just did a very good job of pressuring the quarterback. I know that Highlands Ranch does not exactly have the best offensive line, but he was still able to pressure the QB very well and got his fair share of tackles, TFLs, and a sack. Then we have Espinoza, Mr. Coulter Espinoza, the quarterback here for Ponderosa High School. Espinoza, he was very effective on the ground, having that 72 rushing yards touchdown, and then also had some good movement through the air, specifically over to Max Mervin, and I was able to actually catch up with Espinoza after the game. So here is Coulter Espinoza from Ponderosa High School.
What's up? This is Gideon here with Coulter Espinoza from Ponderosa High School. Now, Coulter, absolutely great game for the Mustangs here tonight. Might not have been the best throwing night, but you were all over the ground, getting a rushing touchdown in there, and just getting good, consistent runs. What were you seeing in the defensive line that allowed you to consistently get that kind of progress on the ground?
It wasn't much about the defense. It was just our line. Our line played great tonight on run blocks. They don't get the credit they deserve all the time, but today they deserve it.
Hey, fair enough. And when we are looking at that offensive line, you're going to have to be going against some dominant defensive lines here in this league. How are you feeling heading into this league schedule, opening with this win over Highlands Ranch?
I feel great. I think this is confidence, and I think we just keep it going from here.
Hey, fair enough. And when we're looking at this game in particular, what would you say was your favorite moment overall from this shootout?
Ooh. I mean, I think I got to say the big run. The second half, I think I got to say that. I think that was my favorite. I think that's the longest I've ever ran.
Really?
In a game.
Well, yeah, but... Well, hell of a time to do it, especially in such a close win. And when we are looking at some of these other teams in your league, you got a Dakota Ridge, you got Bear Creek, who's doing pretty well this year. Which team are you most looking forward to playing in this league schedule?
I'm looking forward to Golden. We're playing at mine, so it should be a really fun game and cool.
Hell yeah. Thank you very much, and best of luck with the rest of the season.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Coulter. It was a pleasure to be able to talk to you, both about this and just about the game in general. That Golden game is going to be very interesting to look at, especially moving forward in this season. I think that one is going to be a big one for playoff season, or for the playoffs for both Ponderosa and Golden. And all around, very, very good game here for the Ponderosa offense. And nobody really encapsulates that as much on the ground as the brand new player came in from out of state, Michigan commit in wrestling, our playmaker of the game for the Ponderosa Mustangs. Yes, it is Al Capone VZ. I was able to catch up with Al Capone after the game, and here is what he had to say.
What's up? This is Gideon from Playmaker's Corner here with Al Capone VZ from Ponderosa High School. I'm be honest, when I was walking out the opposing sideline, they were saying, they got Ashton Genty out there. Like, I felt like you were averaging 10 yards a carry. What were you seeing tonight in that defensive coverage that was allowing you to consistently get 10-yard gains?
I wouldn't say I really focused on the defense. I just focused on my offense and they blocking. And I followed the scheme of the playbook, and it all worked out.
All right, and when we're looking at a team like Highlands Ranch, good first league game, good close win over that. But when it really comes down to it, your touchdowns there at the end of the first half, and then those long breakout runs were the difference. What do you think that this game is going to teach this team as a whole moving forward through the season?
I think the more and more we play with each other, the more we trust each other. And when we trust each other, we get stuff done on the field. And we're able to progress down the field. And I think we can beat anybody if we stick to our plan and play as a team.
All right. Speaking of anybody, you're going to have to be playing Dakota Ridge here in a couple weeks, I believe. How are you guys feeling for that?
I think we feel great. Of course, we got a lot to learn moving forward. We're not perfect, but we're working towards it, and we're just going to keep on getting better throughout the season.
All right. Thank you very much. Hope you have a good night.
You as well.
Thank you very much for stopping to talk with me, Al Capone. It was nice to be able to meet you and learn more about how you saw this game, your performance in this game, and what you're looking at moving forward in this season. Because let me tell you, Ponderosa has got a gauntlet of a league schedule, but we are going to start looking at Ponderosa's schedule moving forward. Looking at next week, Pondo is going to be facing off with Golden at Mines Stadium. Marv K at 7 p.m. After that, on the 25th, they'll be facing off with Bear Creek at 4 p.m. on, again, the 25th. And then on November the 1st, the Mustangs will be facing off against the Heritage Eagles at home at 6 p.m. Highlands Ranch, on the other hand, has yet to face some of those same opponents. They will be playing Dakota Ridge next week on the 17th at 7 p.m., followed by Heritage at 6 p.m., and finally versus Golden at 4 p.m. at Golden on November the 1st. So ultimately, Highlands Ranch now sits at 5-2 on the season, with those losses coming to Ponderosa and Chaparral, and then Ponderosa is now 4-3 with wins over Rampart, Falcon, Chaparral, and now Highlands Ranch. And ultimately, that is probably going to do it for me tonight. I hope that all of you are having a great day, staying safe, and listen, if you're listening to this while driving, keep your eyes on the road, stay hydrated, and I'll catch you all on the flip side. Peace.
Obviously, you want a trainer who can make you stronger and faster with the work you put in, but what about a trainer who can help you rehab and recover like the pros? Look no further than Junkyard Training, that not only offers specific strength and speed training, but also offers a plethora of recovery and rehab techniques like cryo, cupping, recovery boots, and so much more. Learn more today by visiting junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594. Once again, visit junkyardtraining.net or call 303-521-7594 and get started today.
What is good, y'all? This is Gino with the Playmaker's Corner podcast, and it is time to recap the games in Week 7 in the 4A classification for the 2024 Colorado High School football season. We got games on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, with most games being on Thursday. So let's not waste any more time and start off with our first game on Thursday here, where we have George Washington, who keeps it rolling for their second straight win after shutting out Aurora Central 28-0 at home. No stats in that one, and we didn't get any stats in this next game either, where we have Grand Junction Central, who moves to 2-0 in league play after squashing Skyline 49-14 on the road. Next game here, Northfield ran for 6 touchdowns as a team in their 61-7 win over Montbello. Xavius Chineth had 3 total touchdowns, 2 rushing and 1 passing, with 93 rushing yards on 7 attempts, and then 5 other Nighthawks had a rushing touchdown, including Joaquin Oliva, who had a receiving touchdown as well. Defensively for Northfield, the sophomore Alfred Anderson led the way here with 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. Then you also had Elian Oliva with 7 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Aiden Martin also had a sack, and Brandon Bell had an interception. Next here, Pooter got their first win of the season after squashing Greeley West 28-0 on the road. No stats there, and that takes us to our next game, where number 2 ranked Dakota Ridge has a league championship in their sights after taking down Heritage 42-25 at home. QB Kellen Berenson had another fantastic game for Dakota Ridge. He went 10 for 11 for 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no turnovers. His leading receiver was Nathan Rodriguez with 3 receptions for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Trace Bratton with 2 receptions for 87 yards and a touchdown. Running back Sam Collis also had a monster game for Dakota Ridge. He racked up 95 yards and 3 touchdowns on 13 carries. I also got to shout out Landon Carlsbeck, who had 14 carries for 91 yards. He also had a 45-yard passing touchdown, and he forced and recovered a fumble on defense. Defensively here for Dakota Ridge, Jack Offerdahl balled out once again for a team-leading 13 tackles. Blake Bishop and Nolan Hartman both had an interception, and Julian Lopez, Jace LeBlanc, and Marcus Weston all had a sack. Moving on now, Air Academy shut out Liberty 14-0 at home as they try to keep their playoff hopes alive. Air Academy doesn't have any offensive stats put in here, but on defense, Jackson Schmadika racked up 6 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a forced fumble for the Cadets to help them get this win. For Liberty, Kyle, sorry if I mispronounced that, Profit, Jackson Miller, and Clay Shelter all put up double-digit tackles here for Liberty. Ponderosa got a much-needed win over 9-ranked Highlands Ranch, 42-28 on the road. Dialcapin Vizi led the way here for the Mustangs. Sorry if I mispronounced that. He put up 189 yards and 3 touchdowns on 24 carries. And then sophomore QB Coulter Espinosa ran the ball nicely with 101 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 6 carries. On defense for Ponderosa, junior linebacker Caden Miller had 11 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Ashton Smith had 10 tackles. And Ryan Tongren, Bryson Tidwell, and Wyatt Bueller all had 1 sack apiece. For the Falcons, it was senior QB Crew Garrick who did everything on offense with 4 touchdowns. He completed 26 out of his 45 passes for 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then his leading receiver was George West with 127 yards and 2 touchdowns on 9 receptions. And Jaden Puhia also had 61 yards and a touchdown on 8 receptions. Luke Bakken had 62 yards rushing plus 14 tackles, a forced fumble, and a sack on defense. And then Vinny Taylor had 11 tackles and a sack. Despite no Gavin Ishmael, Frederick still squashed Silver Creek 52-12 at home. The usual starting QB Gavin Ishmael went down early with an injury and didn't return, but he still finished with a rushing touchdown and 28 yards on 2 carries. Junior QB Preston Kissinger stepped in very nicely for the Golden Eagles. He went 12 for 15 for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. His leading receiver was senior tight end Burke Eisman, who had 66 yards and 2 touchdowns on 3 receptions. Then you also had Tristan Dean, who had an all-around great game with 12 carries for 86 yards and a touchdown, 4 catches for 62 yards, and then defensively he had 2 tackles for loss. And then you also had Braden Rudman with a 56-yard receiving touchdown. On defense here for Frederick, Wesley Walker and Sam Chambers had 1 sack each. Thomas Jefferson got back on track with a 55-12 win at home over Denver North. Luke Kuehler was in at QB for the Spartans. He went 7 for 10 for 135 yards, and he also rushed for 104 yards and a touchdown on 6 carries. Then he also added an 88-yard kick return touchdown. A couple of freshmen here for Thomas Jefferson, Mekhi Jones and Dimitri Brown, both had 1 touchdown apiece, and Jalid Coleman and Sean Lindgren both had 2 rushing touchdowns apiece. Adams City lost a brutal one at home to 6th-ranked Broomfield 61-0 in our final game of the Thursday games. Darian Jackson had a perfect game throwing the ball for Broomfield, going 7 for 7 for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. 5 different Eagles had a rushing touchdown, and Michael Benner had 2 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown. On defense, 4 different Eagles had a sack, and Mason Smiley and Jawan Martin both had 1 interception each, with Smiley's going for a pick 6. Now moving on to our Friday games. In our first of the Friday games, number 1 ranked Montrose solidifies their ranking after taking down Doherty at home 56-27. No stats here for Montrose, but for Doherty, QB Leland Fresquez went crazy, going 28 for 34 for 381 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no turnovers. His leading receiver was sophomore Brody Noyle, who finished with 205 yards, 2 touchdowns on 9 receptions. Jalen Hale also had a nice game with 8 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown. Moving on now, we have a ranked matchup here where 5-ranked Palmer Ridge escaped with a 24-21 win over 10-ranked Durango on the road. Javier Elvira was the main guy for Palmer Ridge. He had 219 yards and 2 touchdowns on 19 carries. He should be the main guy going forward here for this Palmer Ridge offense. It's great to see that they are finally giving him more carries after they should have used him more to put that Mesa Ridge game away. For Durango, Coley Feeney went 20 for 34 for 235 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Grady Feeney had 60 yards and a touchdown on 13 carries, plus 5 receptions for 63 yards. Sebastian Tripp was the main receiver, getting 69 yards and 2 touchdowns on 5 receptions. And then defensively here, Cole Pontine had 19 tackles, and Malachi Byer had an interception. Grand Junction demolished Thornton 57-7 on the road after putting up 457 rush yards as a team. Will Applegate went 8 for 11 for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also had 49 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns on 8 carries. Isaiah Martinez had a big game with 188 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 9 carries, and Matthias Martinez had a nice game as well with 130 yards and a touchdown on 16 carries. Sand Creek potentially squashed Cheyenne Mountain's league championship hopes after taking them down 57-15 at home. Jaden Lyons and Achilles Evans both had 2 touchdowns apiece here for Sand Creek, with Lyons putting up 71 yards on 7 carries, and Evans got 117 yards on 9 carries. Ethan Mangrum had himself another monster game with 120 yards and a touchdown on 24 carries, and he also went 3 for 5 for 108 yards for 2 more touchdowns. Elijah Brotherns had another big game as well, putting up 2 touchdowns and 76 yards on 2 receptions, plus 150 kick return yards and a kick return TD, plus 5 tackles and 2 tackles for loss on defense. Also defensively, De'Aaron Mitchell III had 14 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Joseph Cruz had a team-leading 13 tackles and an interception, and Miles Reddix had an interception. And that takes us to the next game where Golden came away with a 14-7 win at home over Bear Creek. Sophomore QB Thatcher Matthews threw for both of Golden's TDs. He went 8 for 12 for 138 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and he also rushed for 100 yards on 22 carries. His leading receiver was Jack Dixon with 87 yards and a touchdown on 3 receptions. Then on defense here for Golden, Diego Calderon had 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and an interception, and Gabriel Reese had an interception as well. For Bear Creek, J.D. Lazaro had 12 tackles and 3 tackles for loss. Jordan Cordova had an interception and a forced fumble, and Dylan Thomas had an interception as well. Moving on now, Vista Ridge kept things rolling with a 21-14 win at home over Rampart. Zayden Stevens went 9 for 17 for 151 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 pick, and Gabriel McFarland rushed for 109 yards and a touchdown on 20 carries here for Vista Ridge. Jameer Ford was the leading receiver by far, putting up 89 yards and 2 touchdowns on 5 receptions. Defensively, J.B. Borland had 10 tackles, Smith Ho Ching had 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss and 2 sacks, Aiden Smith had a sack, and Jacqueline Watts and Dominic Williams both had an interception. For Rampart, Carter Leffler had 5 catches for 85 yards, and on defense, Camden Burns had 16 tackles, Justice Derrickson had 6 tackles and 3 tackles for loss, and James Royer had an interception. In our third to last of the Friday games, Riverdale Ridge stomped on Longmont 56-0 to stay undefeated. No stats in that game. So that takes us to our probably most exciting game here in Week 7, where the number 3 ranked Pueblo West Cyclones controversially got the win over the number 4 ranked Mesa Ridge Grizzlies 31-28 at home to stay undefeated. Gavin Lockett ran all over Mesa Ridge, putting up 206 yards and 3 touchdowns on 25 carries. Defensively for the Cyclones, Matthew Zeck had 4 tackles and a sack and a block punt, and Clay Connor and Jason Marquez both had 6 tackles and a half sack each. For Mesa Ridge, it was a huge game for Trevone Solis, who finished with 138 yards and 2 touchdowns on 20 carries. Bryce Reel struggled throwing the ball a bit. He went 15 for 31 for 211 yards and 2 touchdowns. Xander Owanski was his leading receiver with 3 receptions for 61 yards and a touchdown. And Sonny Rogers also had 2 receptions for 57 yards and a touchdown. On defense, Christopher Hinojosa got his 5th interception of the year here for Mesa Ridge. Lastly here in our Friday games, Falcon pulled out the 28-26 win over Widefield at home. No stats in that one, so that takes us to our one and only Saturday game here on October 12th. Centaurus shut out Gateway 40-0 at home. No stats in that one, so that will wrap up this recap here in Week 7 in the 4A classification. This is Gino with the Playmaker's Corner podcast, and I want to thank you all for listening, and I will see you all in Week 8. Peace out.
Hey, y'all. It is Cody Stoffer here with the Playmaker's Corner podcast, and I am in charge of the 5A classification down the stretch here. So let's go ahead and jump into it with Thursday action. On Thursday, there were 7 games in 5A here. We're going to start up north with a Fort Collins showdown between Fossil Ridge and Rocky Mountain. And Fossil Ridge did not really leave any doubts here, jumping off to a 19-0 lead prior to halftime, and they would continue that trend into the second half, eventually winning this game 40-7, highlighted by Nick Kubat's 21 of 29, 248-yard, 3 passing touchdown stat line. And of course, one of the bigger benefactors of this was Luke Garvin, 4 receptions, 125 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns there. Defensively, this team was able to force 3 interceptions, Marcus Mosier getting 2 of those. On to another league here, this time in the metro area, Denver South and Ralston Valley. You want to talk about not leaving a doubt, 35-0 in the first half for the Mustangs here. Zeke Andrews, 16 of 17, 201 yards, 5 touchdowns, and able to get in a senior quarterback, Riley Jodel here, 6 of 11, 60 yards, and a passing touchdown as well. The run game was doing all right, 27 carries for 136 total yards, but the receiving attack was explosive as 5 different receivers catch touchdowns. Nick Bonallo with 1, Drew Gates with 1, Ethan Shirazi, Evan Shirazi, and Levi Rios all reeling in touchdown catches. And this defense doing a good job of generating some pressure, intercepting the opposing passer, and overall just holding this opposing Denver South offense to under 200 total yards. Grandview beats Smoky Hill 49-0. Blitz McCarty, the junior quarterback, 9 of 13, 117 yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, Caleb Lamas here, runs for 2 touchdowns in a backfield that also included Blitz McCarty with 1 and Chris Blanks with another. And obviously, this defense was out there winning 8 TFLs, 5 sacks on the night. Fort Collins, Fairview, a crazy shootout of some kind here. Fairview and Fort Collins 14-7 after one quarter, and then Fairview up 35-21 after the first half here. And that strong start would help Fairview pull this crazy game out 68-49, but not before Justin Cranford, 34 of 53 passing attempts, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns to just 1 pick. Out of the backfield, Jack McKinn here, 22 carries, 119 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns for the Lambkins to keep them in this game here. Levi Hermson doing the primary damage, catching the ball, 12 receptions, 148 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Defensively, not a whole lot going on for the Lambkins other than a Caden Souders interception and only 1 total sack in TFL. This was not a very strong defensive game from either squad, and that is shown because with the Knights here, Jordan Rochelle gets the only interception on the night, and he also registers a hurry, which I think is very interesting. But offensively, Fairview was clicking. Jordan Rochelle, 7 receptions, 119 yards, 1 touchdown. Torrey Davis, 5 receptions, 164 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That is definitely a Playmaker of the Week candidacy here. If not for Jordan Rochelle's 7 carries for 93 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, making his total 4 on the night as well. Kai Ellison, the sophomore quarterback, 21 of 27, 436 yards and 5 touchdowns and just 1 pick. In one of the crazier scores we've seen this season, Fairview survives 68-49 over Fort Collins. Moving into some 4A action here, or never mind, 5A action. Boulder gets a win over Mountain Range to the tune of 23-6. Miles Robbins and Andre Drapeau here, both rushing for a touchdown. No stats were inserted for Mountain View. Cherry Creek defends their home turf against my alma mater 41-7 here. Brady Vodka, 21 of 30, 303 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns here. Out of the backfield, Jaden Fox, 15 carries, 110 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns for the Bruins here. As far as Arapahoe goes, just not really able to generate a ton of movement up front. Only were held to 2 yards per carry. Mitchell Price, 6 of 19 for 151 yards and a passing touchdown at least. That passing touchdown being caught by none other than Andrew Smart. 3 receptions, 105 yards, and a score. Still had himself a pretty solid game. To wrap up Thursday action, North Glen beats Lakewood 40-20 here. Really no surprises. Stevenson for the Vikings here, 17 carries, 308 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. Definitely an awesome performance here. Freshman quarterback for Lakewood, Kasten Steinke here, 19 of 43, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's an intriguing stat line here, as Lakewood did lead this game 20-13 heading into half before Northglenn turned it all the way up and turned it all the way out. Moving into Friday, October 11th action here, we start off Littleton West beats Arvada West 35-14. Now, upset alert here in the Centennial League. Nothing is safe, nothing is sacred. Cherokee Trail beats Eagle Crest 14-13 in the winning effort here. Tyson Smith, 10 of 17, 127 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 pick. And this Cherokee Trail offense barely eclipses 100 yards, but they also were stifling this Eagle Crest rushing attack that was led by Joe Steiner, 15 carries, 63 yards. Joe Steiner also 15 of 26, 116 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 INT. PATs are big here for Eagle Crest in this losing effort. Whittycomb here, 9 receptions, 72 yards, and both receiving touchdowns, doing everything he possibly could for this squad here. Not sure if Eagle Crest missed a PAT or if they tried to go for a 2-point conversion here, but regardless, it still results in an Cougars W here. This Cherokee Trail defense did a great job getting pressure on Steiner all night. 11 total hurries. Cade Brook, 4 hurries and a sack. And then Raul Rodriguez and Blake Rodriguez both with sacks and pressures from everywhere else for Cherokee Trail in a huge upset win that is going to give them a very strong chance to make the postseason. Pine Creek dispatches of Douglas County 38-3. This is primarily highlighted by the 3 rushing touchdowns and 325 total yards that Pine Creek was able to amass on the ground. In a huge response here, Valor Christian does respond and beat Castleview 34-6 following their upset loss to Mountain View last week here. This was a huge game for Cash Spence, who had a hat trick rushing the football here. Castleview just not able to generate offense at a consistent clip and not really able to rip off some big gains. Not sure if Derek Gordon got injured in this game, as he was 5-11 for 108 yards and a pick. And then Hudson Rodarte, the junior quarterback, came in 8 of 13 for only 39 yards. Not sure if that is an injury or if that was just a health swap. Regis Jesuit beats Fountain Fort Carson 45-7 here. This is primarily highlighted by freshman quarterback Luke Rubley, 11 of 20, 145 yards, and 3 touchdowns to just 1 interception, finding JoJo Hernandez for 2 of those scores here. Moving on, Erie beats Vista Prep 50-0. Overland, in a huge win for their playoff hopes, beats Westminster 50-21 here. Jarius Ward, 16 carries, 190 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that big win. Doubling back to that Erie dub. Nothing too crazy, it looks like. I don't think that touchdowns have been properly inputted. Legend beats Chaparral 55-0 here. Mountain Vista beats Thunder Ridge 51-0. Mullen, in a very close win and arguably a must-win game, beats Legacy 28-27 here. Mullen gets out of there. Koa Dietrich, 13 of 20, 200 yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. Dante Depew with a rushing touchdown, as well as Koa, 1 carry for 14 yards and a touchdown in all of those PATs, obviously connecting here. Despite Tyler Anderson's effort on the ground, 19 carries, 44 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Legacy in the losing effort. Legacy actually was winning 28-7 at halftime before Mullen pulled off the 21-point comeback with 21 unanswered points and got the major W. Brighton breeds Prairie View 35-7 here. Horizon gets a close win, a narrow win over Rangeview 21-14 here. That might be able to help Horizon compete for league here. As far as the Brighton game goes, Tate Tompkins, 3 rushing touchdowns, 144 rushing yards. Horizon, you know who else? No one else. Alex Birch, 18 of 21, 231 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and just 1 pick. Finding Stevenson and Cottrell here for Rangeview. Tyson Tuck, the junior quarterback, 9 of 24 for 138 yards, passing touchdown and a pick, but 15 carries for 111 yards and a touchdown as well. As far as Horizon goes, great rushing attack by Jeremiah Martinez. 25 carries, 133 yards, and a touchdown for a balanced approach to help Horizon pull out the one-score win. 14 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to come back and win this game. And in arguably the biggest game of the entire weekend in 5A here, Denver East pulls out 15 points in the final frame to beat Chatfield 29-26 here. Huge game out of the backfield from Sean Campbell. 14 carries, 132 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. But this Denver East defense is the one that stepped up significantly here. 9 tackles for loss with Amir Johnston, Edward Tour, and DJ Crow both getting a pair, all 3 getting a pair. DJ Crow with 2 sacks, 6 hurries. Edward Tour getting 2 sacks as well. 7 total sacks as a unit for this Denver East squad. And then Elijah West Dua with a kickoff return for a touchdown, 99 yards to the house. Gonna help Denver East win this game 29-26 and propel themselves up into a very pristine playoff spot here in this upset win in Chatfield's house. To close out the weekend, Rock Canyon beats Fruita Monument 42-0, and that is going to do it for the 5A recap. And fresh out of the 5A recap, we are heading into power rankings. For those who aren't familiar, the way that power rankings work is that Simon, aka Coach V, myself, Gideon, Gino, and Phoenix all rank teams in every classification from 1 through 10, and then we average those scores out as each spot is worth a certain amount of points, and then those total points is what determines our collective PMC rankings. But before we get started, power rankings are brought to you by Junkyard Training. Junkyard Training is located at 14697 East Easter Avenue, Centennial, Colorado, Suite E, offering speed training, youth sports training, weightlifting, rehab, and recovery that includes cryotherapy, cupping, recovery boots, and more. Visit today or call 303-521-7594. Look up Junkyard Training or call 303-521-7594. And let's go ahead and jump into these power rankings here on the 1A level here. And so I'm going to start from number 10 here. We got Meeker/Peyton, who are both tied for the 10th spot here. When looking at these teams, we got Coach V, who had them at 9, saying, quote, "I knew this would be a close game, but a win for CSCS makes me feel good about having them take their spot in the top 10. I put at 5-1, the Panthers are rolling and pulled out a narrow win to give CSCS the boot and make a spot in my top 10. That is the 2 votes for Peyton here, getting 4 collective points. As for Meeker, Gideon has them at 2 points at the number 9 spot and says, are going to win league, and most of the teams in the 9 through 14 slots lost this weekend. Gino has them at 10 for 1 point. It says, make that 4 straight wins for Meeker as they re-enter my top 10 for the first time since the beginning of the season. Phoenix says the Cowboys were more than likely win out their conference with some intriguing opponents coming up. Despite their shutout win over Roaring Fork, they get a drop because of the massive shakeup in the rankings with Lyman's loss to Holyoke. So a little bit of a spoiler there, but Meeker's 1 point from Gino and Phoenix plus 2 from Gideon makes that 4 points and gives Meeker and Peyton the tie at 10. Now we got a new team here in the top 10. That is Holyoke at number 9. Coach V has them at 10 saying, why do they have like 7 games scheduled this season? Either way, a win versus Lyman at least warrants a top 10 appearance. I agree. I say the Dragons will sneak into my top 10 after their upset over Lyman on the road. That shows grit, but a couple concerns I have is that there's only 7 games on the schedule, and B, they have a hungry Yuma team on the road next. So I'm excited to see what happens in that game, but let's go ahead and jump over to Gideon, who has them ranked at number 5, saying the Ray loss looks better now, but it's wild what happens when you play more than 1 game a month. Now, Gino has them at number 8, saying, statement win over Lyman to re-enter my top 10 this week. That's an extremely impressive win late in the season and gives them a good shot at playoffs. Phoenix is going to echo Gino's sentiment here and have them at 8 and says, welcome back, Holyoke. A win over Lyman gets them back in the rankings and the edge over Wiggins. Holyoke here sitting at number 9 with 14 total points. Monte Vista, number 8 in the PMC rankings with 17 total points. Coach V has them at 6, saying no surprises here. I got a forfeit win, so I could not bring myself to move them up from my number 7 spot here. And then you have to travel to Gino before you get another Monte Vista spot here. He says Del Norte forfeit to keep Monte Vista at 7 this week. And Phoenix says Del Norte didn't want the smoke either. And also has them at 7, so that's where they kind of average out. But without Gideon's ranking here, they sit at 8 with 17 points. Just narrowly ahead of them by a single point is Highland at number 7. That's where Coach V's got them, saying they win as expected and move on. I have them at 8, saying scoring 60 is a great way to catch my attention, and Highland could be looking at a potential home playoff game this season if they keep it up. Gideon also has them at 8, saying the Huskies are good, and Brogan Palmer is one of the best two-way players from 1 to 3A. This league is a piece of cake to them. Now, Gino has Highland at number 9, saying kicked a decent Estes Parks team's butt, 61-6, and that moves them up to 9 in my rankings. And then Phoenix has them at 5, saying, I hate to give them the edge over Buena Vista since their game was forfeited, but you can't deny that this team is legit and can score a lot. Only loss was shut out 14-0 by Wiggins, so still got to keep an eagle eye on this team in the playoffs. Highland sitting at 7. Wiggins, speaking of the Tigers, number 6 here with 20 points. Coach V has them at 8, saying they beat a quality team in Yuma to move up a couple spots after scaring Lyman. I actually fire Wiggins all the way up to 6 here, saying after a narrow loss last week, the Tigers bounce back to trounce Yuma and fly up these rankings for me. Gideon has them also at 6, saying barely lost to Lyman and looking pretty good overall. Gino also has them at 6, saying almost beat Lyman last week and absolutely smacked Yuma this week to climb up to my 6th spot. And Phoenix has them at 9, saying this team have lost to good teams and they've also beat good teams. We're close in defeating Lyman and got back on track with a win over Yuma on the road. And that's going to put Wiggins at 6 overall. Now, pretty decent jump of 7 points here for Buena Vista. And Simon just says, rip Dolores Huerta prep. And then I just have forfeit wins, still have them at 5. Gideon has them at 7, saying only losses are to number 2 and 4 on this list, and they weren't bad. I think this team will be well battle-tested heading into playoffs. Gino still has them at 5, saying forfeit, keeps them firmly at 5. And Phoenix said Dolores didn't want the smoke. I understand at 6. So pretty easy week for Buena Vista here. Now, the biggest movement here is Lyman tumbles down from number 2 to number 4 here, with all of us ranking Lyman at number 4, and the rest of these rankings were basically going to be hand in hand. Coach V said the scare from last week turned into an upset this week. There's no time to reflect as they have to prep for Ray, which will be a difficult game. I respond by saying not necessarily the worst loss, but losing at home after taking a lead at half is going to be something that defines this team for better or for worse. It at least gives them stuff to work on mentality-wise, but this is a tough loss right before Ray. Gideon said, sheesh, guys, first regular season loss since 2020. Wild. Gino responds with, after some close calls earlier in the season, Lyman finally falls to Holyoke for their first loss of the season. They could potentially turn things around against Ray next week, but that is a tall task. Phoenix says, and Goliath has fallen, and it doesn't look like it's going to be any easier as they have to make the long drive to Ray next week. This will be their chance to redeem themselves, and if they drop the Eagles on the road, they are back in the top 2 in my books. Now, number 3 is Forge Christian at 41 points. This is a pretty big jump here. Most of us have Forge Christian 3. Coach V said 1 is expected. I put remaining undefeated is now what it takes to be top 3 in 1A. Gideon said destroyed Flatirons Academy, only 2 games left and are likely to win out. Gino, only 1 here with Forge Christian at 2, saying there's a good chance they put up at least 40 points on every opponent they face this year. And Phoenix says they continue to remain perfect in 7 weeks and show no signs of slowing down, will more than likely end the season with a perfect record. At 2, we have Centauri, just by a couple more points here. Coach V says took care of business. I said the Falcons did what they were supposed to. Gideon said continued dominance over center. Gino has them at 3, saying still undefeated and looking unstoppable. And Phoenix says Lyman falls to Holyoke and Centauri shutout win over center. 58-0 gives them the 2 spot. And the unanimous number 1 spot here is Ray. Coach V saying Ray continues to roll. There's a reason why they're the only team in all the classifications to be number one since the preseason. I put the Eagles remain undefeated and now have sole possession of first place to pair nicely with a reeling Badgers team to truly show they're up top. Gideon said good win over Burlington. Whoever did max preps juked me out. Chino said, could Ray double up Lyman next week? I don't know. When the last time Lyman lost 2 games in a row. So that game now becomes extra interesting. And Phoenix said, took care of business at home, hosting Burlington in an absolute blowout. So, as a reminder, number 1, the Ray Eagles. Number 2, the Centauri Falcons. Number 3, the Forge Christian Fury. Number 4, the Lyman Badgers. Number 5, the Buena Vista Demons. Number 6, Wiggins Tigers. Number 7, Highland Huskies. Number 8, Monte Vista Pirates. Number 9, Holyoke Dragons. And tied at 10 are the Meeker Cowboys and the Peyton Panthers. Just outside, receiving 1 vote, was Burlington from Gideon here, saying everybody loses to Ray, just need to see how they bounce back. This league is so tough. And that'll do it for the top 10 in 1A. Moving on to 2A football here. Just outside getting votes are Sterling and Pagosa Springs. Gideon said only loss is barely to Lamar, likely going to win out for Sterling at his number 10 spot. Coach V, myself, both have Pagosa Springs at 9. Coach V did say another loss, and they may not be ranked top 10 again. I put a bit of a tumble, especially considering this is a rivalry game, but they are now behind Bayfield in league and have an uphill battle over Alamosa to get back to the top. Gino still has Pagosa Springs at 10, saying, I know losing to a rival like Bayfield has to sting bad for the Pirates. They can either let a loss like that define their season, or they can turn things up and get revenge later. And Phoenix had Pagosa Springs at 8, saying, going to put them here after a tough loss to Bayfield, but their record has shown that they can beat good teams like Elizabeth and Monte Vista, and only losing to Centauri by 1 despite them being 1A, but a very good 1A team. They have a long conference slate ahead of them, and that'll really put their rankings to the test. But here at the number 10 spot, sneaking into the rankings, is Strasburg. Coach V has them at 6. You know, talking about last week as far as that being a closer game a little bit, so not giving up on Strasburg here. Gideon has them at 9 after they didn't play, as does Gino and Phoenix for a collective 11 points. 1 point ahead of them is Lamar here. I said tough loss on the road, but this team remains as one to watch. And if a rematch were to happen in the playoffs, get your popcorn ready. Gideon still has Lamar at 6, saying lost to a good Woodland Park team. Gino has Lamar at 8, same as Coach V, saying, I really expected them to take care of business against Woodland Park, but it looks like they'll be missing out on the league championship after that loss. And Phoenix has them just outside, and that puts Lamar at number 9 with 12 points. And number 8 is Eaton, Coach V's former stopping grounds. He has them at 10, saying, after a rough first 2 games against TCA is currently number 1, and Pueblo Central is top 5 in a tough 3A classification. They've rattled off 4 wins in a row, including a signature win over Res Christensen. They get Wellington next week, where things can get very interesting. I have Eaton at number 7, stating a cool 27-0 shutout over a playoff hopeful is a nice statement that the red team ain't going anywhere. Gideon says 7, Eaton doing better and beat a solid Res Christian team. Gino also at 7, saying the Reds are inevitable. They've won 4 in a row after looking dead in the water the first couple of weeks and are an actual threat against Wellington and Berthoud for that league title. Phoenix has Eaton sneaking in at 10 here, saying it's hard for me to keep Lamar on the rankings since they don't have any impressive wins thus far and were defeated on the road against another undefeated team in Woodland Park and came up short. Eaton, however, have not lost a conference matchup yet, and their losses aren't nearly as staggering when you look at the opponents. So Eaton here at number 8 for PMC. Now a bit of a jump here as we jump to a tie for 6th place here between Elizabeth and Delta at 19 points. Let's go ahead and run through this here. Coach V, let's start off with Delta, has them at 7, saying a much better performance resulting in a win to move up. At 6 is where I have them saying needed to show some strength following the falter last week. Gideon does not have Delta ranked. Gino has Delta ranked at 6, saying they bounced back quite nicely with a much expected win over Middle Park. And Phoenix has them also at 6, saying good win against Middle Park on the road. They may not win league this year, but that loss to Basalt last week. But they're still a top team in 2A and will be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. As for Elizabeth here, Coach V has them at 5, saying they continue to roll with another big win. They probably won't be challenged until Kent Denver at the end of the year. I have them at 5, saying almost scored 50. Gideon has them at 8, saying even with the Pagosa loss, still beat Strasburg and Bennett. This Kent-Denver game will be fun. And then Gino does not have Elizabeth ranked, but Phoenix does at 7 and says, I don't usually like to give the edge to teams with head-to-head losses above others, but Pagosa Springs Conference loss to Bayfield has me concerned, and Elizabeth took care of business last week at Strasburg and then curb stomped their rivals Bennett at home 49-0. This team will likely be the 2A East League champs. Now at number 5, we got a new team here skyrocketing in from outside of the top 10, Woodland Park here. Now, first ranked up here, I have them at 8, saying this team remains undefeated and has shown that they can win big or close games. They must stay disciplined down the stretch, but an undefeated season is definitely within the realm of possibility. Gideon shot them up to 5, saying slip past Lamar in what looks like a thriller. Gino said Woodland Park could very well finish the season undefeated going into playoffs after that crucial win over a previously undefeated Lamar squad. And Phoenix has them at 5, saying they got a chance to protect their undefeated record against another previously undefeated team in Lamar and came out with a big win. Woodland Park, number 5. Wellington 4, that's going to be all of us ranking Wellington at the number 4 spot. Coach V saying they beat University without Doss, which is a game changer. They win to maintain, though. I said shut out University in a huge bounce-back statement win. Gideon said beat University, although without Brevin Doss. Gino said with that win over University, that is Wellington's first win against a playoff team in the last 2 seasons. It's awesome to finally see them get over that hump. And Phoenix said tough loss to Berthoud last week, but a nice way to bounce back by shutting out University 17-0 at home. Now jumping to our number 3 spot, our number 2 and 3 teams separated by only 1 point here, but it's going to be the Basalt Longhorns here, and Coach V has them at 3 as well, saying took care of business. Gideon says handily beat Cole Ridge, and Gino says dominated Cole Ridge to stay at 3 in my rankings. All of those fellas have them at 3. As for Phoenix and myself, we have them at 2. Phoenix saying remains undefeated after taking down Cole Ridge at home a week after defeating Delta. That is a darn good team and will easily finish the season undefeated entering the playoffs. I said staying consistent after their 5-score deficit win over Cole Ridge. And the unanimous number 1, the Classical Academy. Coach V says took care of business. I put near 50 burger. Gideon says beat a previously undefeated Denver West team, will win out. Gino said they'll be 1 going to playoffs. Not much to say here because the remaining schedule is going to be quite easy. And Phoenix said good win against an up-and-coming team in Denver West and a 7 TD shutout, no less. Still the top team in 2A for me. So, just to run it down, that makes TCA, the Classical Academy Titans, number 1 at 50 points. The Berthoud Spartans here at 2. Basalt Longhorns here at 3. Wellington Eagles 4. Woodland Park Panthers 5. The Elizabeth Cardinals and the Delta Panthers in a 2-way tie for 6th. The Eaton Reds at 8. The Lamar Rolling Thunder 9. And Strasburg at 10, with Pagosa Springs and Sterling just outside of 2A. On to 3A, one of our most dynamic ones. This is the one I'm going to miss when we stop doing power rankings after this week. But let's go ahead and start with the teams that are just outside. Mountain View here, getting a 10th place vote from both Gideon and Coach V. Coach V saying they continue to win now, notching 4 in a row, but they get an absolute war with Thompson Valley on Thursday and then Pomona after that. We will really know what they're made of after those games. Gideon said this 10th spot was between Disco and Mountain View. I went with Mountain View. The Lions played a harder opponent and a harder league schedule. So Mountain View just outside, and then Pueblo East just outside. Gino with them in his 10 spot, saying next week's matchup against Pueblo Central is going to be huge. I liked East chances. I'm not going to lie. But let's go ahead and jump to our number 10 spot here where Coach V has them at 9. Saying, I wouldn't say a shocking loss, but it has been a while since they've been blown out 2 weeks in a row. This team is very young, and so we will have to see how they respond going into playoffs. I have them here at 10, saying the Rough Riders barely nabbed this last spot, highly due to pedigree and reputation, but these last 2 games are as uninspiring as they can be, and if they don't whip into shape, it might not just be the power rankings that they're looking in on from the outside. Gideon has them at 9, said, lost pretty bad to Pomona. We need to see how the rest of the league schedule goes, but the Riders might be an away team in the playoffs. Gino has them at 9, said, didn't even put up a fight against Pomona. I feel like a 9 ranking might be generous after a loss like that. And Phoenix said, a Windsor loss is tough. A conference loss to Pomona is brutal. They have got to turn it around if they want a chance to stay competitive in their league. Now, sneaking in here from last week, formerly looking from the outside, is Palisade here at number 9 here. I actually have them at the number 7 spot here, saying this team has quietly won Their last 3 each by a bigger margin than the last and have only lost to teams in higher classifications. Gideon echoed my sentiment and ranking, saying only losses are top 10 4A teams. There aren't many teams that can say that. Good squad that will likely win their league. Now, they are on the outside of Geno's here, but Phoenix has them at his 8th spot, saying, I've been very impressed with this team this season. This is a great way to get started in conference play by shutting out Rifle at home. So, that puts Palisade at number 9. Green Mountain, number 8 here, just like Coach V's ranking, and he says, huge win over Wheat Ridge is just what they needed. I have them at 9, saying, after much debate, I'm going to keep the Rams here after their big win over Wheat Ridge. Gideon has them at 8, says, beat Wheat Ridge pretty badly. Gino has them at 7, said, made light work of Wheat Ridge. Green Mountain is still a threat this season, despite what their record may say. And Phoenix has them just sneaking in at 10, saying this team has had its up and downs, but they started off conference play in a big way to put them back in the rankings. Green Mountain at number 8. Ahead of them by only a single point is Discovery Canyon here. Coach V has them at 7, 1 spot ahead of Green Mountain, saying to care of business. I put 50 Burger will allow them to retain their spot for me at 8. Gideon has them just on the outside. Gino matches me at 8, says keep them at 8 after that blowout win over Pueblo Centennial. And it looks like Phoenix has them at 7, saying Roosevelt loss gives them a boost in the rankings after a solid blowout win over Pueblo Centennial on the road. Now we have a huge jump here to number 6 by 15 points, and it starts to get a bit more packed up here at the top. Pomona, number 6. Coach V has them at 6, saying another win, this time against a perennial powerhouse. They have officially entered contender status in my mind. I have them at 6 as well, saying the Panthers will not only supplant the Rough Riders here in this spot for me, but will also give them a shove down the list in doing so. Gideon has them at 6 as well, saying ran through Roosevelt by 30. Gino has them at 7 here. Or I am a liar, actually. Coach V, Gideon, and myself have them at 5. Gino has them at 6, saying Pomona continues to impress after dominating Roosevelt. They could realistically beat anyone in 3A at this point. And Phoenix has them back at 5, saying after taking down Roosevelt by almost 30 on the road, they'll be taking their spot in the rankings as well. So pretty common sentiment for Pomona after their big win over Roosevelt. Thompson Valley here at number 5 actually slides down a spot, surprisingly enough. But let's take a look at their rankings. Coach V has them at 6, saying, I'd be lying if I wasn't concerned about their 6-0 win over Severance, but they win for now. I have them at 6 as well, saying little scary against the Knights, but wins are wins. Gideon here has Thompson Valley at 3, saying, I'm not worried. This league is one of the best in the state, and Severance has been playing tough teams all year. I still like the Eagles. Now at 5 is where Gino has them, says only 6 points on Severance. Really? Thompson Valley is now on upset watch ahead of their game against Mountain View next week. And Phoenix has them as 3, saying they remain undefeated, but opening conference play with 6-0 win is very underwhelming for this team. They don't usually score a lot in their wins, but they have to if they want to have a chance against Roosevelt and Pomona towards the end of the season. So, a little bit of a mixed bag for the Thompson Valley Golden Eagles there, but that is going to land them at 5. Pueblo Central will hop up with 34 total points of votes to the number 4 spot. Coach V has had them in his number 3 spot, saying 1 as expected. I said took care of Canyon City down south, and I have them at 4. Gideon has them at 4 as well, said beat a playoff contending Canyon City by 23. We have Gino putting Pueblo Central also at 4, saying they keep it rolling after smashing Canyon City. And Phoenix here has them at 6, saying went into Canyon City and came away with a good win to stay where they are in the rankings. Overall, that puts Pueblo Central at 4. At number 3, the Windsor Wizards here. Coach V has them at 4, saying took care of business. I have them at 3, saying 50 burger shutout will keep you planted here. Gideon has them at 6, saying as expected against Niwot. Gino says blowout over Niwot keeps Windsor as my 3. And Phoenix has them at 2, said giving them the edge over TV this week simply because Windsor's shutout win compared to TV's is a 7 touchdown difference. Now at 2 is the Lutheran Lions. Coach V has them at 2, says a slight early scare, but they finished strong, rattling off 49 on Thursday. I put overcame a slight scare in the first half to roll over the Gators. Gideon said screamed past Stanley Lake. Apparently it's Gator season. Gino has them at 2, saying Stanley Lake was hanging in there until second half collapse led to Lutheran staying at 2 in my ranking. And Phoenix has them at 4, saying good win over Stanley Lake and arguably the best team in 3A with their only loss at the hands of 4A Pueblo West on the road weeks ago. But the number 1 ranked team is unanimously Meade, saying, lol, they weren't in danger of losing this game. They continue to roll. I just said undefeated. Gideon said, beat a solid Timnath team by 3 scores. A much expected dub over Timnath will keep Mead as my number 1, as stated by Gino. And Phoenix said, brutalized Timnath on the road and remained a top team in 3A. So, the top 10 in 3A are number 1, the Mead Mavericks. Number 2, the Lutheran Lions. Number 3, the Windsor Wizards. Number 4, the Pueblo Central Wildcats. Number 5, the Thompson Valley Golden Eagles. Number 6, the Pomona Panthers. Number 7, the Discovery Canyon Thunder. I want to say number 8, the Green Mountain Rams. Number 9, the Palisade Bulldogs. Number 10, the Roosevelt Rough Riders. And just outside are going to be Mountain View and Pueblo East in 3A. And now we're on to 4A here. Just outside getting some votes are Ponderosa and Monarch here. I had them at 10, saying going to have them jump into the top 10 in the Steed for Highlands Ranch. And Gideon says Mohai is back. The Coyotes are on a crash course with Frederick to win this league, and their losses are just slightly better. Honestly, either Monarch or Frederick could go here. And then Grand Junction is just outside getting votes from Phoenix, Gino, and Coach V at their 10 spot. Coach V saying they won big. We will see how long this sticks, though, with their strength of schedule. Gino said, let's see if they can win the I-25 league next week against Cheyenne Mountain. And Phoenix said they may not have been very good this season and continue to do so, going all the way to Thornton and destroying them 57-7 to remain perfect in their league. Only lost this season, Durango. Now, at 10 is Heritage. Coach V says, for them to score 25 against Dakota Ridge, not bad at all, but they are on the verge of not being ranked. 4A isn't super deep this year, IMO, so it can definitely happen after next week. I have them at 9 as well, saying this 9 spot is perfect for them, who at their absolute best can compete with top teams, but don't always get their absolute best and good bounces. At number 9 is Vista Ridge. Gideon has them at his 9 spot, saying beat a playoff quality Rampart team with some solid players. However, Palmer Ridge is next. You've got to keep this close to stay in the top 10. Gino said nice win over Rampart, and Phoenix has them at 8, saying Durango lost to a conference opponent. Palmer Ridge gives them a bump down the rankings, and Vista Ridge able to take down Rampart in a crucial matchup warrants them a spot this in the rankings. Now, Durango here, jumping up from 10 to 8 despite a loss. Why is that? Well, go ahead and listen here. Coach V even acknowledges it's weird to move them up after a loss, but they played Palmer Ridge close with a modern offense. This is a low-key dark horse team as their culture stands strong, giving Palmer Ridge a scare. I have them at 8 as well, saying this loss shows me how good the Demons really are and that they're here to make some noise in 4A. Gideon said, just barely lost to Palmer Ridge. The Farmington loss looks weirder every week, but the losses are to other top 10 teams. Gino said, put up a good fight against the vicious Palmer Ridge run attack, and Phoenix has them at 9, saying, going to give them a slight bump down the ranks here. After a tough loss to 4A runner-up last year, Palmer Ridge, they kept it close and gave them a good fight, and is worth keeping in the rankings. Now, Riverdale Ridge here at 7, that's where we have them. Simon saying 1 is expected. I said 50 piece. Gideon said Longmont dub by 50. The Ravens need to keep it within 2 against Broomfield to stay in the realm of home seed for a first round. Gino said, we won't know what Riverdale Ridge is made of until they play Broomfield in 2 weeks. Phoenix basically says the same thing. Said got themselves a shutout win against Longmont, just like Broomfield. Speaking of Broomfield, those Eagles are here at 6 for all of us. Coach V saying 1 is expected. I said Adams City. Gideon said it's Adams City. Gino said much expected blowout win over Adams City. And Phoenix said they continue to impress in conference play, outscoring Adams City and Longmont in a combined 120-0 in back-to-back shutouts. Can't wait to see how this team plays against Riverdale Ridge later in the month. At 5, we got Palmer Ridge here. Coach V says they are just able to slip past Durango, who almost upset them. It's hard to win in Durango, so they'll take this win. I said eked out a close one over a physical Durango team on the road, but a win is a win. Gideon said slip by Durango, always good to have a kicker like Red Armstrong. Gino said the Bears saw what good things can happen when you just feed Aviara Elvira. Nice win over Durango to stay in the top 5 this week. Phoenix actually moved them up to 4, saying they get a rise in the rankings after Mesa Ridge falls to Pueblo West. Another close win that saw them on the road in Durango get the win. Mesa Ridge here in our rankings is going to be number 4 and is number 4 for Coach V, saying tough loss not being able to punch in a potential winning touchdown. They only drop 1 spot as the power of this offense to still win despite almost being down 2 scores in the fourth quarter should scare teams. I said close loss to the number 2 team, plus the team that was directly behind them head-to-head means no movement for the Grizzlies. Gideon said lost by 3 to Pueblo West. They've lost to the teams in front of them and beat the teams behind them. Gino said, I was really looking for the Grizzlies to show me that they're going to turn a corner against Pueblo West and become that elite team I know they could be, but instead they lose their second close game of the season. Phoenix has them at 5, saying slight bump down the rankings after facing a very good Pueblo West team, not going to drop them too far after keeping it close with a new number 1. Spoiler alert for Phoenix. But as far as our personal rankings, we have a tie here at number 2, which is why it's going to eat up that 2 and 3 spots here. Number 2 is Pueblo West and Dakota Ridge. Let's go through Pueblo West here. Coach V has them at 3, saying they almost blew a lead in the 4th. It came down to a goal line stand where they held Mesa Ridge on the 2. There's definitely a playoff matchup waiting to happen this year. I have them at 2, saying beat Mesa Ridge in what looks like it was a thriller to retain their number 2 spot. Gideon has them at 3, saying slipped past Mesa Ridge and have one of the last games of the year against Montrose. Gino has them at 3, saying a messy win over Mesa Ridge keeps the Cyclones as one of the only undefeated teams left in 4A. That game against Montrose in the final game of the season is looking like a potential Final Four preview. And Phoenix put them at 1, saying Montrose has been number 1 the last couple of weeks now, but I'm giving the West this spot this week after their win over a top 4 team in Mesa Ridge. It was close, but in the end, Pueblo West pulled it out and held on. So that's Pueblo West and all of those reasonings and all those rankings to put them at number 2. As far as Dakota Ridge here, Coach V has them at 2, saying quality win over Heritage. They're going to be really tough squad, tough stop come playoff time. I have them at 3, said nice margin win over Heritage. Gideon has them at 2, saying don't underestimate Highlands Ranch, but beat Heritage pretty badly. 20 is a lot of points. Chino has them at 2, saying Dakota Ridge is quietly becoming a favorite to win state this year, and dominating wins over Heritage are huge signs of that. Phoenix has them at 3, saying they have been more impressive this season, continue to impress in conference play, hosting a top team in Heritage. Now Montrose here gets the number 1 spot. Someone said nice win over Doherty. I said beat Doherty to win. Gideon said beat Doherty pretty hard, and that Mesa Ridge game is a must watch. Gino said pretty much one of the only teams in 4A that I trust to win consistently, and Phoenix put them at 2, saying nice blowout win against Doherty to remain undefeated, going back-to-back, scoring 56 points in their last 2 wins. So, in 4A, that has Montrose 1, tied 4-2 are the Pueblo West Cyclones and the Dakota Ridge Eagles. Number 4, the Mesa Ridge Grizzlies. Number 5, the Palmer Ridge Grizzlies, I'm pretty sure are Bears. 6, Broomfield Eagles. 7, Riverdale Ridge Ravens. 8, Durango Demons. 9, Vista Ridge Wolves. 10, Heritage Eagles, and just outside are Grand Junction, Pondo, and Monarch. Now in 5A, just outside receiving some votes was Erie. Here, Gideon has them at 10, saying beat Vista Peak by 50. I still like this team, and I think they'll win this league. They may snag a bye if one of the teams in front of them loses in the regular season finale or league championship. Phoenix has them at 9, saying beat Vista Peak Prep in a 50-point shutout on the road. This team continues to impress and are proving they are more than ready for 5A comp. Now, the first number 10 team here, the first ranked team, is Arvada West here. Coach V has them at 8, saying, tough loss against Columbine drops them a number of spots, but I'm not going to drop them outside of the top 10. They face a very difficult last 3 weeks with East, Chatfield, and Ralston. Another top 10 loss could drop them out if they're not able to compete, but I really think they should be fine. I have them at 10, saying, going to let the Cats stick around since their 2 losses are only to undefeateds. Now, moving over here, Gino has them at 10, saying Columbine is scorching out right now, but you would have loved for Arvada West to keep the game somewhat close. That does it for Arvada West there. At 9 is Chatfield here, moving up in the rankings, but dropping down in points. Last week, they had 14 total points of votes. This week, they only have 9, and I think that's a better indication on where we feel Chatfield is at. Coach V says they suffer another tough 3-point loss to a team in the top 10. It has been a tough stretch for them these last 2 weeks, but these lessons will make this team with a young quarterback and offensive core better for the playoffs. Another loss, though, will probably drop them out of the top 10. Other than that, 9, I said tough loss to Denver East at home, but this is still one of the best teams in the state. Gideon says 9, 2 straight losses brings Chatfield down heavily. The Chargers have 2 games left to turn around to face Columbine for the regular season finale. Gino has them at 8, saying 2 straight losses for a combined 6 points. Chatfield is going to be fine. And Phoenix has them at 10, saying seems weird to put someone in the rankings after losing back-to-back in conference play, but by 3 to 2 really good teams that have been in my top 10 for most of the season tells me this team is on the cusp, so I'll put them at 10. At 8, revisiting the top 10, is Denver East here. Coach V has them at 9, saying this is their biggest win of the year as they re-enter the top 10 for me. We've known how talented they are, and this win reassures that belief. They have a gauntlet still ahead of them with A West and Rouseland Valley, but this will make them tougher for the playoffs as they learn to win consistently. I have them at 8, saying a clutch dub propels the Angels back into good graces and gives them a shot to compete for league. Gideon has them at 8, saying a win over the former Chassa Selection Index number 1 is a very good resume piece. Good bounce back after having to deal with Columbine. Gino has them at 9, saying the Angels have some massive momentum going into their next 2 games against A West and Rouseland Valley. And Phoenix has them at 8, saying Angels have had their struggles, but this was a big win for them and a must win to stay alive in league comp against a very good Chatfield team. At 7, we have a pretty big jump in points here. A jump by 11 is Fairview retaining their spot from last week. Coach V saying they move up along with other teams losing as they survive a shootout against Fort Collins where not a lot of defense was played. While this is a little bit of a red flag, Fort Collins is a squad with some offensive firepower. We will see if this is a sign of things to come in the playoffs. I have them at 6. I said, yes, I'm going to bump up this team for allowing FC to almost score, or I am going to bump down this team for allowing FC to almost score 50 points. Gideon has them at 7, saying survived a shootout against Fort Collins. No defense was played in this one, I guess. Gino has them at 7, said can't keep Fairview down much longer as they keep winning and other teams keep losing. And Phoenix here has them at 4, saying choo-choo. Fairview continues to roll. They did allow the most points of any opponent they had faced this season with Fort Collins scoring 49, but the Knights still outscored their opponent in 3 quarters and evened out in the third quarter itself, with both sides scoring 14 points apiece. Now at number 6 is the Rouseland Valley Mustangs, only by 2 points over Fairview here. Coach V said a dominant 40-point win over South and some other losses moved them up. I have them at my 4 spot, said almost scored 50 against South. Gideon has them at 6, saying beat Denver South as expected. Good team, and that Chatfield win isn't aging too great, but still looking solid. Gino has them in the same spot as Gideon, saying numerous losses in the top 10, had Rustin rising up to 6 in my rankings. And Phoenix has them at 7, saying good blowout win against Denver South and remain perfect in their league, but the real challenge will be the rest of the month for this team that will determine if we see them remain in rankings in the future. At 5, by only a single point, we have Valor Christian. Coach V has them at 5, saying while they had a little bit of a slower start against a solid Castleview team, they bounced back as expected after a tough loss. They also luck out with Eagle Crest losing. I have them at my 7 spot, said nice statement and bounce back win at home to get your feet under you. Gideon has them at 5 as well, saying bounce back with a win over Castleview. However, until they beat someone on Mountain Vista's level, they don't get into the top 4. Gino said 34-6 against a team like Castleview is very tough to do. Valor is definitely a top 5 team. And Phoenix has them at 6. They get a bump in the rankings after taking care of business, hosting Castleview, and with Eagle Crest taking a loss to Cherokee Trail. Valor at 5. Legend at 4. Coach V has them right there, saying there never really was a concern about them losing to Chap, so they move up with Eagle Crest taking an L. Shout out the girls flag football team, though, with 2 key wins this week to make a big statement for Legend football, though. Now that's a statement win. I have them at 5. I have nothing to say. Gideon with them at 4 did the best of any team against Columbine and blasted Chaparral, tough squad. Gino says the Titans find themselves in the top 4 this week after Eagle Crest and Arvada West lost. And Phoenix has them at 5, said, I see you, Legend. Impressive shutout, hosting Chaparral, and their only loss against Columbine warrants them a top 5 spot. Now, before we jump into the top 3 here, it's the same top 3 from last week in the same order. But, biggest note from this week, Eagle Crest was at 4 and did not receive a single vote because they lost to Cherokee Trail 14-13. So, take those notes and understand that's what happened. Coach Villa's Columbine at 3 said another good win. I have Littleton West at 2. Gideon has them at 3, saying flew past Arvada West by 20. Going to be interesting to see that Chatfield game, but Johnny Reb is likely to win out. Oh, don't give them a nickname, bro. Come on now. They ain't that cool. Gino, that's a very nice win over Arvada West as Columbine now has won 21 straight games dating back to last year. Phoenix has them at 3, said hosted Arvada West team looking for redemption and make a statement in 5A. The defending state champs shut that down and took care of the Wildcats by continuing to run it down the throats of their opponents. Mountain Vista, number 2. Coach V says 5th win this season, scoring 50 points or more. I have them at 3, saying record watch for Madreski. Gideon has them at 2, said as expected against Thunder Ridge. Gino said murdered Thunder Ridge as expected. Phoenix said this team further proving their top 2 team in 5A. They shut out Thunder Ridge 51-0 and are on a mission, winning state championship. Number 1, Cherry Creek. Coach V says a blowout win over Arapahoe is a lot more quality of a win than some may think. They continue to roll. I said, beat my alma mater, frowny face. It's tough. Anyways, Gideon said, storm past Rappo. Not much to say. The Bruins are so good. Cherry Creek said, Gino said, made light work of Rappo. Damn. All right. And Phoenix said, good win hosting Rappo and starting off 2-0 in league. So, for 5A, that is Cherry Creek Bruins 1. Number 2, Mountain Vista Eagles. Number 3, Columbine. Number 4, Legend. Number 5, Valor Christian Eagles. Number 6, Rouseland Valley Mustangs. Number 7, Fairview Knights. Number 8, Denver East Angels. Number 9, Chatfield Chargers. Number 10, Arvada West Wildcats, just outside Erie. Once again, these power rankings are brought to you by Junkyard Training. Junkyard Trading located at 14697 East Easter Avenue, Centennial, Colorado, Suite E. Check out this facility. Go visit my guy Jesse Bronham over there. Awesome dude. His facility and the trainers that they have there offer speed training, youth sports training, weightlifting, rehab, recovery. That includes cryotherapy, cupping, recovery boots, and so much more. You gotta come check out Junkyard Training. Go ahead, visit today or call 303-521-7594. That's Junkyard Training, 303-521-7594. That brings you this week's PMC Power Rankings. Once again, these Power Rankings brought to you by Junkyard Training, starting at 5A. Number 1, Creek. Number 2, Mountain Vista. Number 3, Columbine. Number 4, Legend. Number 5, Valor. Number 6, Rouseland Valley. Number 7, Fairview. Number 8, Denver East. Number 9, Chatfield. Number 10, Arvada West. In 4A from Junkyard, number 1, Montrose. Tied for 2 is Pueblo West and Dakota Ridge. Number 4, Mesa Ridge. Number 5, Palmer Ridge. Number 6, Broomfield. Number 7, Riverdale Ridge. Number 8, Durango. Number 9, Vista Ridge. Number 10, Heritage. Now moving to 3A from Junkyard. Number 1, Meade. Number 2, Lutheran. Number 3, Windsor. Number 4, Pueblo Central. 5, Thompson Valley. 6, Pomona. 7, Discovery Canyon. 8, Green Mountain. 9, Palisade. 10, Roosevelt. Number 1 in 2A from Junkyard. TCA. 2, Berthoud. 3, Basalt. 4, Wellington. 5, Woodland Park. Number 6 is a tie between Elizabeth and Delta. 8 is Eaton. 9, Lamar. 10, Strasburg. And then the 1A rankings from Junkyard. Ray, Centauri, Forge Christian, Lyman, Buena Vista, all in the top 5. 6, Wiggins. 7, Highland. 8, Monte Vista. 9, Holyoke. And tied at 10 is Meeker and Peyton. These are the final power rankings for PMC this season. Thank you so much to Junkyard Training and Jesse Bronham over there. Love that guy. Go check out his facility. He's a good dude. But heading forward, this will be a playoff preview / update segment at the end of our recaps. Thank y'all so much for sticking through all of our power rankings this season. And go ahead and stay tuned for Playmaker of the Week coming up. And we ain't going anywhere, especially with this next segment here, brought to you by Code Red Coaching. Visit coderedcoaching.com or email rosecj.6599@gmail.com. So that way you can be as mentally sharp as these Playmakers of the Week. Starting off in 1A here with Phoenix. He has a couple of nominees here. Clay Crawford of Meeker, 3 carries, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns, along with 6 tackles, 3 solo, 3 assisted. He also has Colton Cobb of Peyton, 14 carries, 147 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 receptions, 26 yards, and 7 tackles, along with a forced fumble. Casey Midcap of Ray, 10 of 10, 252 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 4 carries, and 39 yards. But he is ultimately going to crown Mason Schopner here of Grand Valley as the Playmaker of the Week. 17 carries, 149 yards, a touchdown, and 9 tackles, along with a sack and a fumble recovery for the Grand Valley Cardinals out there in Parachute. In 2A, Gideon with a few options here. Starting off, Carter Jager of Sterling here, 210 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 11 tackles, 2 of those for loss, and a fumble recovery and a 7-point win over Brush to stay in contention for league championship. He's also got Dyson Woodward of Alamosa, 5 of 10 passing, 210 passing yards, 2 TDs to 1 INT, but on the ground, 228 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in a win over Gunnison. Marcus Schoenberger here of Woodland Park is his next one. 9 of 18 passing for 170 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no picks, along with 30 rushing yards, 6 tackles, and 2 pass deflections in a win over the previous CHASA number 2 ranked Lamar Rolling Thunder. He's also got Skylar Stryker here, or Strycher from Berthoud, 25 of 34 for 379 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 rushing touchdowns on 32 rushing yards in the blowout win over Valley. He's also got William Daniel of Basalt, 193 rushing yards, and a hat trick of touchdowns to go with 12 tackles and a pass deflection and 23 rushing yards in their blowout win over Cole Ridge. But Gideon's choice for Playmaker of the Week will be none other than Logan Moore. 352 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, and 3 tackles against La Junta to get a first league win and break an 11-year losing streak against the Tigers in a shootout win. For Coach V, some of his nominees here were Sawyer Wald here of Lutheran, 266 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns in Lutheran's 49-26 win over Stanley Lake. There's also senior Eli Metzger here, 2 field goals kicked, including a 42-yarder and a 6-0 win over Severance. But ultimately, he's going to give it to junior Caden Lake here. 6 receptions, 208 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns in a 28-21 Eagle Valley win over Glenwood Springs. Coach V notated that this is a huge win over Glenwood Springs to give them a winning record at 4-3, and this 4th win is the most they've had since 2019. For Gino here, couple of options, one of them being Elijah Brotherns of Sand Creek, 2 receptions, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a kick return touchdown, and 150 total kick return yards to go with 5 tackles and 2 of those for loss in defense for the 57-15 win over Cheyenne Mountain. Another nominee of his was Gavin Lockett of Pueblo West here, 206 yards and 3 touchdowns on 25 carries, along with the win over number 4 ranked Mesa Ridge in our rankings. But he's going to ultimately end up crowning Aviar Elvira here. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. From Palmer Ridge, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns on 19 carries, and the win over number 10 Durango. Now for myself, I could pick almost anybody on offense for Fairview, whether that's Ellison's 5 passing touchdowns and 430 yards, whether that's Jordan Rochelle's 3 rushing touchdowns and 1 catching touchdown and over 200 yards, or I could count Torrey Davis's 200-plus yard game that had 4 receiving touchdowns along with his 50 yards on the ground. I could also look towards Cherokee Trail and Tyson Smith's 2 touchdown game that helped them beat Eagle Crest 14-13. But I am going to look to an even closer game here, and I'm actually going to give Playmaker of the Week to Elijah West Dua, the senior of Denver East. 4 carries, 24 yards, and a receiving touchdown. That's not the crazy part. The big performance for him came not only defensively, where he led the team with 13 tackles, 1 for loss, and a hurry, as well as 2 pass breakups, but his kickoff return for a touchdown ended up being the biggest difference maker in this game, along with his rushing conversion, making this a 3-point lead where they could not lose on a Chatfield attempt here. So Elijah West Dua here, 123 kickoff return yards, as well as 13 tackles on defense and another 24 yards on offense, 2 touchdowns and a conversion. Dude was responsible for 14 of this team's 29 total points and had some of the biggest momentum swings of the game. So, our Playmakers of the Week brought to you by Code Red Coaching. In 5A, Elijah West Dua of Denver East. In 4A, Javier Elvira of Palmer Ridge. In 3A, Caden Lake of Eagle Valley. In 2A, Logan Moore of Manitou Springs. And in 1A, Mason Schopner of Grand Valley. Those Playmakers of the Week were brought to you by Code Red Coaching, where the grind to greatness starts with the mind. Visit CodeRedCoaching.com today or email rosecj.6599@gmail.com. That's rosecj.6599@gmail.com or CodeRedCoaching.com. And that'll do it for this edition of Playmakers Corner. Be sure to stay tuned for our flag football coverage. It's going to continue to ramp up on Wednesdays as we head into the postseason. And heading forward, no more power rankings for the remainder of tackle football, as we will be talking about playoff implications heading down the stretch into these Uber Ultra League matchups here. I have been your showrunner for this episode. Cody Stoffer telling you to find us on social media, whether that be Facebook or Instagram, Playmakers Corner, at Playmakers Corner on TikTok, at Playmaker Corner on Twitter/X. Make sure to turn on notifications and subscribe or follow anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or on YouTube, where all of our episodes also go. And that'll do it for me. Peace out.